Before I start with fire drills, I would just like to say a couple of welcomes. I would like to welcome Councillor Tony Marshall, newly elected for Halstead, Knockholt and Badgers Mount. Welcome. And to Councillor Lee Allen, our new councillor for Hextable. I can't see where it's on the back row there. Welcome. I hope we don't put you off on your first meeting. I'd also like to welcome back Councillor John Edward Windsor after 9 months. John, your grit and determination has got you here today, and we are very, very pleased to see you back. Welcome. We will understand if you don't stay for the whole duration and then you need to leave early, but it's lovely to see you. Thank you. There are no fire drills planned. If the fire alarm is activated, which is a continuous siren with a red flashing light, please leave the building immediately following the fire exit signs. Before we formally commence the meeting, as council members come together in a quiet moment of reflection, I would like to ask Reverend Bourne to lead us in prayer. If any member wishes the opportunity to leave the chamber during this time, can I please ask them to leave quietly and wait quietly in the members' room? Thank you.
Let's bow our heads as we begin this evening and ask for God's guidance and wisdom. Lord God, from whom comes all wisdom and understanding, we ask you to direct the minds of those who are about to take counsel together on all matters pertaining to the common life of this district. We ask that in their deliberations and their decisions, you would guide them, guide their thoughts, guide their thinking, guide their speaking. Be with them in all they seek to do this evening. We ask that you give to each person here your words of wisdom. You'd enable each person to listen not only to each other, but to you. And that above all, we pray that what we do will be for the good of this district. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, members. I'd like to remind everyone that this meeting may be audio recorded and is streaming live on YouTube. So I ask that you please ensure you are speaking clearly into your microphone. I appreciate that it may be necessary to hold at least one comfort break during this meeting, and I will adjourn the meeting at the appropriate time to allow this to happen. And as a reminder, if you leave during an item, you will not be able to vote on that particular item. So please be mindful and hold on if you can. And I'm also minded, I would like to change the order of the agenda, and I will bring forward item number 9, motions, ahead of questions. So 8 and 9 will swap over. Thank you. I'll now start the meeting. Are there any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chairman. I've received apologies of absence from Councillors Barker, Granville and Varley, and from Councillor Solander for lateness.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Thornton.
Apologies from Councillor Bailey as well.
Thank you. Item 1. Sorry, there's another.
Sorry, Chair. Councillor Hogarth. Did you sorry. Thank you.
Nobody else, fine, okay. Item number 1, I move from the chair that the minutes of the meeting held of the council held on the 24th of February 2026 be approved and signed as a correct record. Does anyone have any amendments? Those in favour, please show. Thank you. Those against? That's carried. Item number 2, are there any declarations of interest not already included within the members' register of interest? Thank you. Chairman's announcements. It hasn't been long since the last council meeting in February, and part of that time in between was spent recovering from a knee replacement. Even so, I have managed to take part in several online engagements during that time. Once I was back on my feet and driving again, I was able to enjoy many more in-person events, including time out in the community, watching Hartley players play, which was very well rehearsed and funny, back out to Chiddingstone School for Easter services and judging Easter bonnet competitions. They've come a long way since my children were at school. Most recently at St Michael's Prep School, where I read stories to the kindergarten children and joined Year 1 for their Forest School session. The children in kindergarten were especially delighted to be trying on the chairman's chain and had their photos taken. And I've noticed on their school website, they're very proudly showing off the chairman's chain around their necks. Being out in the community has truly been my favourite part of this role this year. Saturday, I attended Seven Oaks Refugees Welcome for Voices concert, which is held at Walthamstow School, which was well supported by the community of all nationalities. As is usual at this point in the civic calendar, there seems to be a flurry of lasts for the last of the mayors, including the Mayor of Swanley's Last Supper. And I'm looking forward to Maidstone's Twilight Cruise over the bank holiday weekend, as well as squeezing in a scout renewal of promises on Sunday afternoon at Down Campsite. My final fundraising event took place on Monday, a curry night that raised further funds for my charities and gave me the chance to thank the Mayor's colleagues and the community supporters who have given up and been part of this year with me. And I'm grateful for everyone who attended and all your support. There are still engagements, including 2 retirement functions. I'll reduce that to 1 because I did one this afternoon. I was at the head teacher at Shoreham Primary School, who was leaving after over 11 years there and had brought the school up in special measures to an excellent from Ofsted. I'm going to be attending Andrew Ayres' retirement evening after 14 years at the helm at the Stag Theatre. It's highlighting and acknowledging the hard work of normal people in our community. And I'm also booked to visit some local businesses before the 14th of May. I have events right up to the 12th, where my term will conclude at full council. Thank you. Item number 4, have we been advised I have been advised that we have received no public questions under paragraph 17, part 2 of the Constitution. Item number 5, I've been advised that we've received no petitions to receive that meet the criteria set down under paragraph 18 of part 2 of the Constitution. Item number 6, matters considered by Cabinet or the Scrutiny Committee. 6A, the Kent Joint Municipal Waste Management Strategy 2026 to 2031. Councillor Roy.
Thank you, Chairman. I move that A, the Kent Joint Municipal Waste Management Strategy 2026-2031 be approved and adopted as the Council's statutory joint waste Joint Waste Management Strategy, and B, authority be delegated to the Corporate Director of Finance and Trading in consultation with the relevant portfolio holder to approve minor editorial or presentational amendments to the strategy to support publication and accessibility, including those arising from the design and publication of the public-facing version, provided that such amendments do not materially alter its intent.
Is that seconded?
I'm happy to second, Chair.
Councillor Roy, would you like to speak first?
Thank you, Chairman. The purpose of this report is to seek approval for the adoption of the Kent Joint Municipal Waste Management Strategy 2026-2031. This strategy is a statutory requirement under the Waste and Emissions Trading Act 2003 and has been developed by the Kent Resource Partnership, comprising Kent County Council and the 12 borough and city councils in Kent. Adoption of the strategy is required to ensure continued compliance with statutory duties, alignment with emerging national waste policy, and a coordinated approach to waste prevention, recycling, and disposal across the county. It provides a high-level framework for household waste management, ensuring local strategies are aligned with county-wide planning, infrastructure, and national legislation. This report has also been considered by the Clean and Greener Advisory Committee and Cabinet at their March meetings. Both were in support of the recommendations as set out in the papers. Thank you.
We now go into debate. Councillor Algar.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really pleased to see the ambition in this document, which is very relevant as we approach local government reorganisation. We should set a rising scale of targets for our own performance on recycling over the next 2 years and for reductions in residual waste. I'm particularly keen to see more development of reuse in the district, which is a major feature of this strategy. And we know that Sevenoaks is now coming more in line with good practice and that performance should improve as a result. That can't be the end of this story. The strategy document and greater collaboration with neighbouring authorities points a positive way forward. I've been in talks with Commercial Services Group for the past 18 months to get a reuse shop at Dunbrick. The project plan for Dunbrick is complete and they have the logistics ready for when it's our turn. While Sevenoaks is providing an excellent quality of reuse stock for our closest shop near Maidstone, our community deserves one of its own. And by the way, our local Allington reuse shop, which I urge you all to visit, is packed with bargains, friendly, knowledgeable staff, and a real community spirit. This is best practice. Thank you, Chair.
Is there any further debate? So you read your recommendation out again.
I'll just quickly address, if
Thank
that's
you.
okay, Chairman, the
Yes.
point that's been made. As I've mentioned before in this chamber, all the targets are set by government, recycling targets across the waste streams, and are covered in our waste and recycling strategy adopted by this council about a year ago. If members wish to come forward with proposals to set up recycling stores in the town or elsewhere across the district, that's a matter for them. It isn't something that we can include in the strategy as highlighted in the report itself. I beg your pardon. I will reread the recommendation. A, that the Kent Joint Municipal Waste Management Strategy 2026-2031 be approved and adopted as the Council Statutory Joint Waste Management Strategy. And B, the authority be delegated to the Corporate Director of Finance and Trading in consultation with the relevant portfolio holder to approve minor editorial or presentation amendments to the strategy to support publication and accessibility, including those arising from the design and publication of the public-facing version, provided that such amendments do not materially alter its content. Thank you.
Thank you. You didn't need to read it again, evidently, but I made you do it.
tell me.
Sorry. Sorry. Members will also note there's no electronic voting tonight, so we are a show of hands. So I will ask all those in favour, please show your hands. Thank you. Sorry, you're all standing there, sitting there with your hands up. Any against? Any abstentions? That's carried. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, could you possibly turn your lampshade down a little? It's shining straight into the eyes over here. That's lovely. Now it's on them.
It's my failing eyesight.
Thank you.
Is that all right, everybody? Okay, fine. We go on to item 6B, the public sector housing grants policy. Councillor Cole.
Madam Chairman, thank you. This report presents the outcome of a public consultation and the resultant draft public sector housing grants policy for consideration. The final policy will require approval by full council so that it may be adopted and implemented. The draft.
Sorry, can I stop you, Councillor Cole? You just need to make the movement at the moment. Thank you.
My apologies. I move that the council note the feedback received from the public consultation and B, adopt the draft private sector housing grant policy.
Is that seconded?
Very happy to second, Chair.
Now over to you, Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't get too far into the report, so I'll just reread that one sentence. This report presents the outcome of a public consultation and the resultant draft private sector housing grants policy for consideration. The final policy will require approval by full council so that it may be adopted and implemented. The draft private sector housing grants policy is designed to assist the most vulnerable people living in the private sector within the Sevenoaks district. There are strong links between poor housing conditions and poor health. Poor housing disproportionately affects vulnerable people who do not have the necessary resources to keep their homes in good repair or who require adaptations or alterations to their home to support them to live independently. The policy aims to increase the number of vulnerable people who are able to live independently at home, reduce the number of vulnerable households living in homes that pose an imminent risk to their health and safety, increase the number of empty homes that are brought into use, particularly accommodation that can be used to prevent and relieve homelessness. The Council awards mandatory disabled facilities grants in accordance with the relevant legislation and guidance issued by government, which determines, amongst other things, the type of work that can be funded, the maximum amount of grant, and the test of financial resources that must be made. The draft private sector housing grants policy was subject to public consultation between the 20th of October 2025 to the 15th of December 2025, with focus groups held with partners, stakeholders, members and staff, and dedicated housing and community hub and online survey for partner, stakeholders and customers. All the comments received have been considered and amendments made to the final policy. Overall, there was positive support for the new policy and that the mandatory and discretionary grants will meet the aims of the attached draft private sector housing grants policy, which on the documents is Appendix 1.
Sorry, I was waiting for something else. Sorry.
Oh, but no, that concludes my
Thank you.
report to
Thank you.
Council Chair.
We now go into debate. Councillor Stretford.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you very much to officers for bringing this forward and for answering questions during the last week about some of the aspects. I want to highlight the critical role that the District Council Housing Grants Policy plays in tackling our ongoing health and social care crisis. I think we are all acutely aware of that our community is ageing rapidly. The challenges associated with supporting older residents to live safely and independently at home are therefore increasing. The policy's design is intended to provide essential financial support, enabling adaptations and improvements to homes that help prevent accidents and hospital admissions, particularly amongst the elderly. Most importantly, it's designed to assist those who don't have the means to make the adaptations themselves. But recent data shows a troubling rise in hospital readmissions within 90 days, a clear indicator that many vulnerable residents are discharged only to find themselves unable to cope in their own homes. While Sevenoaks may have a marginally smaller rate per 100,000 compared to our neighbouring districts, we must not ignore the fact that our absolute elderly population is considerably larger than the neighbouring districts. This means that the impact of ineffective support is felt more deeply here, with more families facing the distress of repeated hospital stays and the risks that come with them. As we consider the future of the grants policy, it is essential to recognise its value in helping older people remain safe and reducing the strain on the NHS and improving quality of life. However, I have to express my concern. I did at the in committee and subsequently at Cabinet about the consultation process undertaken and outlined in the papers. Only 10 individuals have responded to this, a figure so low that it cannot possibly reflect the needs or opinions of our wider community. Such limited engagement renders the feedback statistically insignificant, raising serious questions about whether the policy is truly informed by those it aims to serve. The Cabinet member will be more than aware that the social care policy needs to be co-produced if it is to be effective. This is being, or is at risk of being imposed rather than co-produced. In conclusion, while the housing grants policy is vital in our efforts to address the health and social care challenges faced by an ageing population, we must ensure that it is shaped by meaningful input from residents. And so I urge the Council to review the consultation practices and commit to gathering broader, more representative feedback to strengthen this policy and its outcomes.
Councillor Morgan.
I'll sit down on this. Fellow members, I wish to draw your attention to a pressing concern regarding the administration of our housing grants policy and therefore the policy. The lengthy approval process, which can take up to 166 days before work even begins and usually takes at least 3 months, is a significant barrier to ensuring our residents are kept safe and out of hospital. With additional time required for completing adaptations, the 12-month window we aim for may not be sufficient. For many, these delays mean the difference between living independently and facing yet another hospital admission. Worryingly, we find ourselves carrying forward 800,000 of grant money from last year, 600,000 of which is allocated but unspent, with a further 200,000 still not allocated. This substantial sum intended to improve the lives and reduce health risks is sitting idle. Such inefficiency in spending not only undermines the purpose of the policy, but also leaves an ever-growing cohort of vulnerable residents waiting far too long for the support they desperately need. The delays and unspent funds point to deeper issues within the policy's implementation. If our processes are not fit for purpose, we risk failing those who rely on us most. It is imperative that the Cabinet member responsible reviews these procedures as a matter of urgency, identifying and resolving the obstacles that prevent timely and effective grant delivery. Furthermore, I propose that this matter be referred to the Scrutiny Committee. We need robust oversight and transparent analysis to ensure that the policy achieves its intended outcomes, that funds are spent efficiently, and that residents are not left in limbo. Let us commit to addressing these shortcomings so our housing grants policy truly serves the needs of Sevenoaks community. Thank you.
I've got Councillor Camp and then I'll come to Councillor Maskell.
Thank you. I just really wanted to pick up on a couple of things that have been said. For example, the feedback that is inadequate, because you're aiming this policy at elderly people who don't always engage in the same way as everybody else. And I think their feedback is essential, and not many of them probably have given the feedback. Also, they're carers. Now, I'm on the ground with all these people, and in the real world, it's not quite like this. I don't think there's enough publicity to advise people what is available. The process to get that that equipment and the process that my colleague referred to, it's too lengthy. And sometimes the application process is in such a way that the elderly person can't do it, particularly if they don't have anyone who can act for them. And carers can't always do that unless they're nominated. Also, the OTs need to be engaged earlier, particularly with people coming out of hospital. Now, it's really important that people come out to an environment that's safe and equipped correctly, because if they don't, they can't have the proper care put in place. If they don't have the proper care put in place because of safety reasons, carers can't go in. And if they can't go in, the elderly person will be struggling on their own. And then we've seen it, the statistics show that hospital admissions go back up again. So it's kind of a vicious circle. So we really need to make sure more publicity, that we're engaging with the right people, that we can roll it out in a way that they understand, and roll it out in a way that's quickly. We need to have a little bit more of a proactive approach rather than a reactive, because when we're reactive, we're in the situation and it's causing issues for everybody and the safety of the people that we're trying to help. So it's good, but it needs to have a little bit more to it.
Thank you. Councillor Maskell.
Thank you, Chair, and thank members for their comments. And also they're very positive comments by and large as well. And I also totally agree with members who say that there always needs to be done, there's more to be done, and there are a large number of people who need help. It is a large number of people, absolutely. So I have no differences of opinion, and we don't have any differences of opinion as far as I'm concerned with officers either. But you do mention some very critical areas, and I think it's very important that you have done so. And I hope that these issues have been mentioned in the relevant meetings that we discussed in the relevant advisory committees, and also I think we discussed it at Cabinet as well. There's the problems and issues that surround this. Yes, absolutely. When you're talking about consultation, for example, yes, it's always been a problem in terms of consultation, and yes, is it reaching the right sort of people is extremely important too. So we must always. Oh, thank you. That's all right. Thank you very much, Alan. That's very helpful. And it also stops it from going over my notes as well, which is very useful too. And thank you. I've now completely forgotten where I was going with that. And I was really doing well. And that was the trick, wasn't it, Alan? That's where you were going with this. Yes, it's in terms of the consultation, it is always a problem and difficulty, and it is something that always continues to vex us as we've gone in the last 20 years. Sometimes it's been done it's enabled people have been active very often, and sometimes not. So that is totally taken on board. With regard to the grant policy, I think in terms of the grant policy and the grants, it isn't necessary. I don't know where those figures came, and Councillor Morgan, I'd be grateful at some point later to tell me where your figures come from. But we discussed this at Cabinet just to identify clearly that the delays in funding and the delays and the large increase of funding that is available, that has come in as a result of late Kent County Council delivery of funds. Where funds should be delivered in April, the funds have actually been delayed in some cases to September. So it doesn't necessarily reflect that the service isn't being provided. And I think it's very important to members to note that. What it is, as I said earlier, part of the issue is around demand, and there is an issue about meeting that demand. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's just a point of information. The figures were provided by officers. Yeah, so just
Sorry.
a point of information for Councillor Maskell, the figures were provided by officers, as I mentioned at the beginning of my speech. There's been several interactions over the course of this week about the policy to try and get those figures right, and so they've been provided by officers. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Thank you. Is there any further debate? Right, so then we go back to Councillor Cole. Do you want to say anything else? I could do a dance on the table, but nobody would want to see that. You all right? You found your notes? Okay.
Thank you. And I'm grateful for the questions this evening and for the comments. I agree with a lot of what was said, both by my colleagues on the other side of the chamber and by my colleague, Councillor Maskell. We have an ageing population, that's no doubt, probably one of the highest age demographics in this part of the UK. Hospital readmissions within 30 days are, yes, it's important to take note. We do have a low figure when compared with other authorities around Kent. But of course, there's no suggestion that those readmissions within 30 days are in any way, shape or form linked with the original admission. So we can't precisely say, just by plucking figures out of the ether, that as a result of adaptations being implemented at home or not being implemented at home, that they may or may not have been a reason for that person going back into hospital. You're quite right, 10 people took part in consultation. Now, this is a continuation of a policy that was already in place, and it's been fine-tuned. We know, and I'm sorry if Councillor Stretford didn't share this with other members of his group, but we know that as part of the consultation, all members, all housing service staff, customer solutions staff, partners including Kent County Council Social Services, Town and Country Housing Home Improvement Agency, West Kent Housing Association, Age UK, Places for People, Moat Housing Group, and Alterations Improvements, together with invitation sent to 557 residents. Now, I accept that 10 is a low figure. There could be many explanations, and we're not here to second guess why we may only have received 10 results. However, we've taken on board feedback. We're looking at consultations going forward, how we can improve the communications and to ensure that the reach is greater and that we're testing that reach as well. So we are happy going forward. Councillor Morgan, I'm sorry, I must take exception to your comment where you say inefficiencies in spending. Councillor Maskell has already pointed out that last year there was an inordinate delay where KCC withheld funding and were chased by the authorities around Kent to release those funds. You mentioned 166 days. Well, that was an extreme example. You forgot to mention that in one case, we managed to turn around an application in 6 days. And the government data also indicates that on average, the time for allocating funding under the Disabled Facilities Grant, on average around nationally, is between 2 and 6 months. So if we're an outlier, I would suggest that with an average of 80 days or less, that we actually sit in the top percentile of dealing with paperwork and dealing with grants. And I think to say inefficiencies in spending is disingenuous and a slur on the fine work that the officers are doing. Councillor Camp, the process is too lengthy. Well, yeah, I agree with you. I'm not quite sure how we can close that process down. For example, people will be referred by, or we will signpost applicants to KCC, for which we will need an OT report. Now, sometimes the OT report doesn't come through and it needs to be chased and chased. Sometimes the recommendations from OT are just unrealistic. The fabric of the building that they want to put hoists or lifts or things in just cannot sustain the recommendations. So the age, condition of the building, we need to go out, or the applicant needs to go out for quotes for the work. And of course, while that's going on, we need to check on their benefits and to make sure they actually qualify for the funding. At any point of that process, there can be hiccups, not caused by our internal processes, but caused by.
Thank you, Councillor Cole.
Sorry.
Thank you. Sorry
That's
to stop you midstream there, but time is up. So we are asked to note the feedback received from the public consultation, and B, to adopt the draft private sector housing grant policy. All those in favour? Councillor Caton, we can't count you because you went out in the middle of the debate. Okay. And anyone against? Any abstentions? That's carried. Thank you. We move on to item 6C, and that's workforce retention and the SMT. Councillor Maskell.
Thank you, Chair. I move that the recruitment of a Section 151 officer to be designated as the Strategic Head of Finance is approved, or an equivalent job title is approved.
Thank you. Is that seconded?
I'm very happy to second that, Madam Chair.
Councillor Maskell.
Thank you, Chair. Members will be aware that after more than 20 years with the Council, our Corporate Director of Finance and Trading will be leaving us. Having worked with Adrian so closely through the finance portfolio, I cannot thank him enough for his contribution to the Council and his excellent stewardship and advice as the 151 officer. Without doubt, Adrian's departure will leave a significant gap in our organisation. I won't say any more because he gets extremely embarrassed. This report asks Council to designate the Section 151 officer role to the post of Strategic Head of Finance and allow the Council to commence with a recruitment process. Given the work that is required for the preparation of local government reorganisation, it is critical that we do all that we can to retain staff up until the transfer takes place. Within the report, there are a number of actions that are available to us to support the Council in retaining staff during this uncertain period. And I hope Council colleagues will support the adoption of these actions. In addition, I would like to take the opportunity to thank Adrian for his outstanding service to the Council and its communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any debate? Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to second Councillor Maskell's thanks to Adrian for his long service, and I won't embarrass him further. But I would like to just add the small point, because I sit on audit, about the loss of our head of internal audit, who I think also, although she's been here less long, has done outstanding work for the Council as a whole. Most of our members won't realise, but internal audit is essential because they are at the centre of assessing risk right across the council of everything we do or don't do. And the assessments that the head of internal audit has come up with in the last year have been really excellent. And I hope everyone on audit will agree with me. I've no doubt that her successor will do as well. I just wanted to mention that. And on a second and completely different point, I think what is in front of us is very sensible, and I have no comment to make on that. I would like, however, to draw members' attention to the fact that the reports from those councils that have gone through reorganisation and gone into unitary structure is they need double the amount of financial officers, because you need the ones for the transition running the shadow authority at the same time as you ones you need for the remaining authority. And their experiences, you don't just need double for 1 year. After vesting day, you need double for about 3 years to 5 years. That is the experience from other councils. I don't think there's anything we can do about it today, but it is something I think we should be aware of, that these are very precious people to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Barnett.
Thank you, Chairman. I just also wanted to publicly thank Adrian for his commitment and service to this council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shay.
Thank you. A question of detail, please, if I may. Paragraph 20 sets out the actions being taken to support staff and to retain staff. I understand from colleagues in neighbouring authorities that work is going on and has been for some considerable time to put in place training programmes, support personal development for staff to allow them to be competitive when it comes to recruitment for the new unitary authorities. Can I be assured that that is also in train here?
Councillor Maskell, would you include that in your come back? Thank you. Councillor Malone.
Thank you, Chair. I will wait till later on to heap praise on Adrian so that it's spread throughout the evening. I thoroughly endorse the report. I guess my only observation or concern is that as far as I understand it, Adrian tendered his resignation about a month ago. He's going to carry on supporting us after the end of his notice period, but we've used up 1 of the 3 months of his notice period getting to this point, and given that it's a legal requirement for us to have a Section 151 officer, in addition to all the justified points and concerns that Councillor Robinson has made, I just wonder if we can look to find ways to be more nimble around hiring staff in general, and in particular those that are most critical to the council's service delivery. Thank you.
Councillor Solander.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Adrian. My question is about the likelihood of success. So from reading this document, I think I understand that we're not going for a direct replacement like for like, because that'd be considered too difficult in the current market. Hence, it's potentially in a slightly lower less Section 151 would be acceptable. I think the question I would have is, what about that market? Why do we think that market is more likely to be successful? And is this a permanent hire? And what's the likelihood of success of a permanent hire when there's an actual end date on the council itself? And what the plan B would be thereafter? The obvious thought being it's going to be an interim, and an interim CFO is very, very expensive. So it's maybe not for discussion tonight, but it's similar to Councillor Malone's points about the actual processes in place to find the replacement. Thank you.
Councillor Maskell, I could see you frantically scribbling there. It's your turn to come back. I can't see anybody else with their hands up now.
Yes, of course, Chair. Thank you. And thank everybody for their kind comments regarding Adrian. Again, I'll further embarrass him. However, Councillor Robinson also reiterated the loss of the head of internal audit, which is quite right. It's a great loss and an excellent member of staff, and has done an outstanding job to this point. The issue in terms of the requirements of finance officers in going forward into local government reorganisation is obviously going to be monitored carefully as things increase. You will note that we've already increased the funding available for recruitment of finance officers going forward within the skiers, and we discussed that at Cabinet. And also there is money that's being put aside for local government reorganisation within the budget as well, and that will continue. So I think it's well recognised that the difficulties going forward in terms of ensuring that we meet the requirements as we go into reorganisation. And you're quite right to highlight the complexities and difficulties that's going to take, and the impact it will have on resource going forward, and well recognised. Councillor Shea asked the issue around actions to support staff in terms of training programmes. Yes, that's all going forward. You will note that we are very active with the West Kent group of councils, and also recognise the work that's going on there, and there will be a lot of interaction between those organisations to be able to know and understand the workings of those internal workings of those organisations. All of that is ongoing, and that's part of the training and development of the staff. Just coming back, the issues raised by Councillor Malone and Councillor Silander. Unfortunately, Councillor Silander, you weren't at the last FIAC meeting, so there was quite a lot of active discussion around recruitment and the difficulties of that. And I think if you would like to put further questions in writing, that we can adequately cover that. But you do raise very important points, and they haven't gone unnoticed within the FIAC meetings either. I think that's covered everything in there. I think what we can be sure of is that it is entirely recognised that this is a really important area. And going back to Councillor Malone's comment is in terms of speed of recruitment. This is an ongoing element. We do have to, in the case of the chief officer, we do have to go through council in terms of identifying that council approves, and that is part of the issue in terms of slowing things down. However, I think we've got plenty of time in which to move forward, and there are things that have been going on within council prior to this time in terms of getting approval. In terms of recruitment is all already ongoing within that. I hope that helps, Councillor Malone. Thank you.
Thank you. So as Councillor Maskell's recommendation is that the recruitment of the Section 151 officer to be designated as the Strategic Head of Finance or an equivalent job title is approved. Can I have a show of hands, please? All those in favour? Thank you. Anyone against? Any abstentions? That's carried. Thank you very much. You have a piece of paper in front of you with the wording for agenda item 6D. You all have that in front of you. But before we start on that item, I have a few words. Before members comment on or participate in the consideration of the petition relating to the community asset transfer of the Stag Community Arts Centre, I must formally remind all members of their obligations in respect of conflicts of interest and standards of conduct. Members are required to actively consider whether they have any disclosable pecuniary interest, other declarable interest, or any perceived conflict that could reasonably be regarded as affecting their impartiality in relation to this item. In considering this matter, members should be mindful that they are representing Sevenoaks District Council as a corporate body. Any observations, comments, or decisions made must therefore be in the best interest of both the current council and the successor authority arising from the local government reorganisation. Members are reminded that decisions taken by this council, particularly those relating to the transfer of community asset, will be subject to future scrutiny, including external audit and review, notably by Grant Thornton. It is therefore essential that members do not expose this council or the future council to any financial, legal, or, and I've been practicing this word all day, fiduciary risk. I knew I'd get that wrong, sorry. Members must act in the public interest and in the interests of the district as a whole. They do not act solely on behalf of their individual ward or parish or town council. I am aware that some members present this evening also serve as trustees of the Stag Community Arts Centre. Where a member considers that this is a dual role and this could give rise to an actual or perceived conflict of interest, they should not participate in the consideration of this item and should withdraw from the meeting while it is discussed. The assessment of whether a conflict exists is ultimately a matter for each individual member to determine. However, members are strongly advised to take a cautious and transparent approach. I will also remind members that tonight's discussion is advisory and intended to inform the Cabinet. It does not have the authority to approve a resolution that would bind the Cabinet. Councillor Maskell.
Thank you, Chair. I move that the Council notes the content of the report and the change.org petition. And also, Council notes that Cabinet will decide upon the application to transfer the Stag Theatre in accordance with the disposals policy and only when all necessary evidence, including further comments from the external auditors, has been gathered.
Thank you. Is this seconded?
I'm happy to chair, Madam Chair. I'm happy to second, Madam Chair.
You can chair if you wish. Thank you. Councillor Maskell.
Thank you, Chair. I'm introducing this item this evening as there has been significant public commentary and press coverage about the Stag. To place a clear, accurate and lawful position on the public record. And I do appreciate that some in the room have already heard this, but I think it's important for the public record and within Council to state the following. A change.org petition has been widely promoted as evidence that the Council has received a valid petition requiring action. This is not correct. Under this Council's constitution, the change.org document does not meet the requirements of our petition scheme. It is hosted on an external platform not recognised by the Council. It does not collect the information needed to verify whether signatories live, work or study in the district. And attempting to validate incomplete entries would itself raise data protection concerns. It is neither a paper petition nor a petition submitted through the Council's approved electronic system. These are not technicalities, they're safeguards designed to ensure transparency, fairness, and legal compliance. The Chair of Trustees of the Stag Community Arts Centre was formally written to on the 23rd of March to explain this position and to advise on how a valid petition could be submitted should supporters wish to do so. That advice was clear, reasonable, and constructive. However, while the document is not a valid petition, the subject matter it raises has been deemed by the Chairman of the Council to merit consideration, and quite rightly. On that basis, she properly exercised her discretion to direct that the matter be brought forward outside the petition process, so that it can be debated within the correct constitutional framework. That is why this item is before Council tonight and previously Cabinet. But I also need to be absolutely clear about the wider narrative that's developed around the stag, because much of it is simply wrong. And again, I apologise for those of you who've heard this before. The stag does not need saving. It isn't under threat. It is already safeguarded in public ownership and protected for a long-term lease. Claims that the council intends to sell the stag, withdraw it from community use, or allow it to fall into commercial hands are false. There is a 25-year full repairing and insuring lease granted in 2009 to Sevenoaks Town Council. 10 years of the lease remain. The District Council receives no income from the theatre and has consistently treated the stag as a valued public cultural asset. At no point has the council moved to dispose or remove it from community use. Community asset transfer is not a right. It is not automatic and does not mean free. Those distinctions have been repeatedly blurred. Sevenoaks Town Council itself submitted a valuation as part of the application. It is to argue publicly the same asset should be simply handed over at nil value is very, very difficult or disingenuous. This council has a statutory duty to secure best value for residents. Simply giving away a valuable public asset would be indefensible and potentially unlawful. And I think that is something that all members really need to take on board. And particularly where it's been a great deal of concern from the 151 officer. Listening to residents does not mean abandoning governance. Respecting cultural assets does not mean discarding financial or legal responsibility. Members advocating for particular outcomes must be clear about the conflicts of interest and long-term consequences of the positions they take. Decisions made now will bind not only this council, but a future unitary council under local government reorganisation. And our external auditors will rightly take an interest how this matter is handled. Finally, there is one simple fact that undermines the entire sense of urgency that has been manufactured around this issue. If no decision is taken before local government reorganisation, the stag and its existing lease will automatically transfer to the new unitary authority unchanged, with full protections intact. I won't go over cliff edges now. This council will continue to act transparently, lawfully, and in the best interests of residents. And it will rebut misinformation, pressure campaigns, or political posturing that compromise responsible stewardship of public assets. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We go into debate. Councillor Lehman.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, as I understand it, for making sure that we were able to recognise this petition. I looked it up earlier. 7,292 is the latest number. Perhaps as a result of the live streaming, it will go up as we speak. just in passing, I think the council could usefully update its petition rules to, we are in the second quarter of the 21st century now, and we need to recognise how people's expectations have changed. Declaration of interest, I have signed the petition. It struck me as being simple and clear and very positive, and also achievable. Unlike most petitions I see, it's not about data harvesting for political ends, and it is hopefully going to have a considerable impact. Now, it is 240 days now since the Finance Committee recommended to Cabinet, under Councillor Grint's chairmanship, that the freehold of the stag should be transferred to the Town Council. At the time, Councillor Maskell with Councillor Hogarth was advocating for a 100-year lease for the stag, press released, photograph in the paper, and so on. And I think the Finance Committee felt that if a 100-year lease was on the table, it didn't make much sense not to transfer the freehold for that period, primarily because it would release the opportunity for the Town Council to secure greater investment in the development of the stag. So we're not proceeding at pace, is my point on this issue, if 240 days on. Now, to some of the points which Councillor Maskell made, I'm pleased every time he says that the council has no intention of selling or disposing of the stag. If he's wondering why people might have got that impression, although it's not in the petition, he should read his own papers. The paper that went to FIAC and the Cabinet says, we've had an inquiry from a commercial organisation. As such, the council will need to carefully consider how it applies a market value to the freehold community asset transfer of the stag, and if indeed it may need to market the disposal of the asset on the open market. Now, to anybody who reads that, that says the council is open to considering sale of the asset. And indeed, in tonight's papers, in denying that that's the case, it says the council is not seeking a commercial sale. That's a non-denial denial in the trade. A commercial sale, according to these papers, is on the agenda. So every time it's denied, that's good news. Other things he said, there's no urgency. Well, it is true that if the council decides not to transfer the stag, it will go to the unitary. That in itself creates a sense of urgency. There is a rent review coming. What attitude is the unitary going to take to the rent review? There is an end of lease coming in not too far away. What attitude is the unitary going to take to that, particularly when it reads the attitudes in these papers to a commercial sale? And he says it's not right to give away an asset. We'll discuss this later on when we discuss the motion. This is not about giving away anything. This is about transferring a valued community asset from one authority to another. Nothing's being given away to anybody. So we need to get this right. I'll conclude by commending to everybody the articles which our MP Laura Trott's been writing in the paper recently, and the point she made at the end of the most recent one, which says simply, why doesn't the district council get together with the town council, talk all this through and come up with a solution in the public interest that benefits everybody? That's the best way to do it. I'm surprised that the district council has shown so little appetite for those discussions and negotiations. If they were to take place, I retain a confidence that a solution would be found which would best the stag with the town council, with the appropriate safeguards, with the appropriate overreach clauses and so forth, and get us to a position in the public interest, which would be very popular with those 7,000 and more people who signed the petition, but also would give us confidence that the future of the stag is secured and sustainable for many, many years to come.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Clack's hand, then I've got Councillor Skinner, then Councillor Clayton.
This is the point where I usually jump up and talk about the Liberals, but not today, not today. I'm really worried about the how the stag is progressing, and some of the scare stories that are out there. And I'm glad that the leader has made it clear that there's no intention for the stag to be anything other than in the public ownership. But I think we need calm heads and open minds. So bear with me. For 30 years, I worked in a law firm. I did alcohol licensing. On 2 occasions, we got an alcohol license. Everyone said the law didn't permit, but we approached it in a novel way. We looked at the law. We came up with a different approach. It was tested on appeal when people appealed against the decision, and we got it. So you can sometimes look at things in a different way and see what you can do rather than what you can't do. So the question I'm looking at is maybe is best value. Now, as the leader rightly says, for 17 years or so, this council has received nothing from the stag. And we could legitimately maybe give it another 25-year lease, and we will receive nothing for the stag. But for LGR, this council would have probably carried on giving leases to the stag for no money. And as I think has been said, is that the council did help out the stag during COVID, which is actually a drain on the district council's resources. And if there was a problem, it would possibly cost money to the council. So what's troubling me? So if we looked at the extreme ends and say it was given away, what money have we lost? If you're looking at best value in a novel way, what money have we lost for the residents? And possibly saving because the town council would be on the hook rather than the district. Sorry, I've just lost track of where I was. So the only value we get is from the building if it's sold. So if the stag failed when we were leasing it out, it would come back to us and we get the value. If the extreme is given for nothing and the stag fails, could be a substantial overage so that the council still get the money. So it's money. So what the government said is that the councils act in such a way as not to compromise the future sustainability of new councils. The new council will get no money from the stag. The only time it will make money is if it sells the stag. Now, we don't want it to sell the stag. If it did, it may be because the stag has failed, but that would happen anyway. We would do that, and we would get, in this case, we would get the overage. So the novel way of looking at it is the public actually losing any money if that happens? So, I would really love, the town and the district to work together, not fighting it out over social media. I would like to get together, seeking a legal opinion from a KC, who's given instructions to find a permissive view on what can be done and what can work for both sides. And as a backup, look at the longest possible lease with the most benign terms as possible. And that can be a backup to either sale or transfer of ownership. So I want us to work together to look at it. And look, it might be that the legal advice is, if we look at it separate, we try to get a novel legal advice on what is best value, it might come back and say, no, this doesn't work, mate. But if we don't try, when I look someone in the face and say, well, we did our best, I don't want to accept the first answer. I want to accept the right answer. And if the right answer is we can't do it, we can't do it. But I think we have to test it to see, and then to work together, because, as I said, no money has ever been got from the stag during this lease. So look at best value that way. I thought I'd run out of time, but I haven't, so I'm waffling now, so I'm going to sit down.
Thank you. I've got 2 over this side, and then I'm going over to Councillor White, then I'm going over to Councillor Grint, and then I'm going to Councillor Camp. In that order, and then Councillor Shea. So Councillor Skinner, please, first.
Thank you very much. I need to declare 3 interests, I think. I need to declare that I'm a member of the district council that owns the stag. I'm a member of the town council to which the stag has been leased. And I am a trustee of the stag to where the stag, who operates the stag. My interest, and I find myself through the looking glass here, I agree completely with Councillor Clack I am here, and I think that's the first time I may have done that in council, so I think we should enjoy this moment. Why can't we sit down as three bodies, as the district council, the town council, and the stag, and reach an agreement as to where we want to go? That's what the residents expect us to do. The residents expect us to sit down and do what our MP tells us to do, talk to each other, rather than trade blows over social media. So I urge very strongly, and again, I never thought I would say this, I urge very strongly that we follow Councillor Clack's advice and that we move together collaboratively and harmoniously and with a desire to make the thing work in the interests that we all have. Thank you very much.
Councillor Clayton.
Like Councillor Skinner, I have to declare all those interests, all non-pecuniary. I recognise exactly where Councillor Clack is coming from, because he and I worked together as trustees of the Stag 10 years ago to try and resolve problems of governance and the future. Stag is a charity. It operates at break even, and it depends almost entirely on grants for any investments to improve it. And Councillor Clack and I have been involved in about £1.5 million of investment in the Stag building to improve its services, to improve its technical capability. It is a key part of the business model of the charity, without which it cannot function. Stag cannot take on debt. It is impossible for it to function if it does. Now, as I think the leader knows, no grant giver will approve a grant to an organisation which has less than 10 years to run on the lease on the asset which it operates. I think that has been well and truly communicated, I think, to all the cabinet now. And that is exactly where we are. That is precisely where the Stag finds itself. And that is why the Stag, led by its CEO, Andrew Eyre, approached this council to discuss the future well before the start of the LGR process. It has been effectively diverted by this community asset transfer process. Those conversations were started by Andrew Eyre and Roddy Hogarth well over a year ago, and they got nowhere. And the problem is that unless we resolve those issues, the Stag will run into difficulties, and it'll run into difficulties before the LGR process is completed, because the improvements that it needs to make will stall. That's the urgency. That is the urgency. And this council has been aware of it for well over a year. We need to fix it. And I heartily endorse the call by Councillor Clack for a proper conversation to continue the one that was started at the end of 2024. Can we please get back there, round the table, and get it done? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going over this side to Councillor White, then I'm going back over that way.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to express that, to my mind, the council has shown commitment to the Stag, including access to the financial support during the COVID pandemic a number of years ago. And I feel that the council's approach reflects the same principle of responsible stewardship, supporting the valued community assets through both a fair and a transparent community asset transfer process that protects the public resources and follows the council's disposal policy. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Grint next.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. First of all, I'd like to say that I wholeheartedly agree with Councillors Clack and Skinner and Clayton. I think this is a matter that we should move forward with speed. And I think it's a fairly simple matter to deal with. I'm going to take a step back and look at the position in 2008. I was a member of the council back in, I think it was autumn 2008, when full council considered the future of the stag. The future looked bleak at the time. The district council had tried unsuccessfully for several years to run the stag either through by itself or through a commercial partner. And the idea of, well, we were approached by the town council, who expressed an interest in trying to run the stag themselves. And really, as a last resort, on a wing and a prayer, we said, okay, we'll try that. The district council will give a peppercorn rent long lease to the town council to see if the town council can make a job of running the stag themselves. Now, I think we have to say that the town council has done an outstanding job in running the Stag Theatre for the last 15 years, a truly outstanding job. They have kept it alive. They've kept it alive not because it was generating profits, but because the town council was prepared to financially support the operations of the stag in order to keep it alive and keep it viable. We're talking up here about an extremely valuable community asset. And this council is competent to consider the long-term policy on provision of community arts facilities. And I would be very dismayed if we fail to take the opportunity to set a long-term direction for our community arts provision and instead pass that responsibility over to an incoming unitary authority, which will have much bigger issues to consider and will be less interested in taking decisions in the interests of the Sevenoaks district. So in the interest of the Sevenoaks district, where is our community arts provision best handled? And the answer is absolutely clear. It's best handled by Sevenoaks Town Council. We have got the Town Council to thank for the fact that they have run and put money into the Stag Theatre for 15 years. I would like to suggest that if the District Council is actually serious about community arts provision in the district, that we, the District Council, should be prepared to put our money where our mouth is. And we should be prepared to pay some money that will ensure the continuance, the continued provision of continued community arts facilities into the future over a period of, let's say, 20 years. We can note that the Town Council has put in something of the order of 30,000 a year into the Stag Theatre by way of subsidy. And I think it should not be beyond the District Council to say, well, we so value this work that you have done in the Town Council that we are prepared to pay you, the Town Council, a sum of 30,000 a year for the next 20 years to support community arts provision across the Sevenoaks district. That is the way I would approach this matter. I would take it absolutely as read that the District Council should transfer the freehold of the stag to the Town Council. I think that is by far the best way to preserve its future and to ensure that we take decisions here in this chamber before we pass that responsibility to any incoming unitary authority. I should have said at the outset, by the way, I'm speaking in a personal capacity. I'm not speaking on behalf of the Fire Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll have to come back to you, Councillor Morgan, because I've got 2, 3, 4, 5 probably ahead of you at the moment. Right, Councillor Camp and then Councillor Shay. Then I'll come back over this side.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to pick up a point about COVID. You said that you had put money in, that's true. But so if you cast your mind back, the public rallied hugely, massively. We had all those events on the Vine, and it wasn't just the public of Sevenoaks, it's across the district. And donations came in and everybody rallied, not just Sevenoaks, but everybody rallied to keep the stag going. And yes, the town council put money in. And now again, when the stag is under threat, for want of a better word, the public are rallying again. They've put in a petition, whether you accept it or not. That's thousands and thousands of people from across the district are saying, hang on a minute, we need this to work. And it's not about, we're not talking about money. We're not talking about giving anything away. We are talking about safeguarding the stag for the future. Leases simply don't do that. And to ensure, I mean, even if you have a low cost lease, it doesn't do any, even if it doesn't cost anything, it doesn't matter how you package and wrap it. It might be a charity, but ultimately it's a business of some description. And a business has to succeed, whether it succeeds on grants or income or whatever, it's got to succeed. And the way to do that, and this has not been mentioned, is the stag is not big enough. And from a sales perspective, it's got to attract the London shows. And in order to do that, it's got to be bigger. And if we don't attract the London shows, we are going to struggle. You will start, all theatres will struggle if you can't accommodate bigger London shows. If we can do that, we can stop people going up to London to watch the shows. They will stay here instead, and we can increase the revenue that way. But in order to make the stag bigger, we need to put money into it. Now, the town council has put money in before and stands ready to do it again. They've run it very well for however many years, 15 years, stepped up at the beginning to save it with a load of people. And we're stepping up again. We want to safeguard it for the future. And the only way we can get that investment is to own it, to have the freehold, because then we can apply for the funding that we need to make the stag bigger so it can accommodate the future needs, not only now, but it can go forward to the future. We are only custodians. I want to make that clear. Everybody sitting in this chamber is not going to be here in 50 years' time. But I would really like to think that the stag is going to be there. And we need to make sure that it's there. And the only way we can ensure, as Councillor Grint was saying, is to hand it over. It's been run very, very well by the town council. The whole of the district is saying, and beyond, because I know people beyond the district who come to the Stag Theatre, we need to ensure that it's still there. And so we really, really must find a way to sort this out. Push all the red tape aside, cut through the barriers and say, okay, what do we need to keep the stag here? A unitary is not going to be as interested as we are. We can put a caveat in if ever it's going to be developed or whatever, but yes, that's fine. But at the moment now, we need to ensure its future, and we need to do it now, and we need to work together to make that happen. Thank you.
Councillor Shay.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry to say that Councillor Skinner sitting here working out how old we'll all be in 50 years' time to work out if we will in fact still be here. What an interesting discussion. Thank you, everybody. The petition, yes, it's not in the format that is prescribed in our constitution, but I think we can agree that it does demonstrate a great deal of strength of feeling across the district and well beyond for support for the theatre's place in the town, in the district, in the region. It's clear from the support that it has that it actually demonstrates what perhaps Stag already knows. And sorry, I should have said, of course, you all know that I am also a town councillor and a Stag trustee, because that is in my declarations of interest. But what this demonstrates is what we already know, which is that the reach of the Stag goes far beyond the town. Far, far beyond the town. Dance schools come from miles around to use its gigantic stage. When you talk to people in the Stag, they have travelled for a long, long way to see their children perform. It's so highly valued, not just in this town and not just by people who live or work in the district. It's an extraordinary catchment, and its importance in the cultural life of the town and beyond is central. I think the points made about this being joint is important. It has been for a long time a joint endeavour between the district council, the town council and the charity. And it's been joint across party lines, because those councils have waxed and waned politically over the years. And so this is not in any way, shape or form a party issue, I believe. To just lean into the point that Councillor Camp has made, I would urge, if anybody hasn't actually read the business case for the stag that has been put forward, and I appreciate there's been an awful lot of pages of business cases for an awful lot of assets going through, but the intention behind it is to secure it and to develop it. Councillor Camp's talked about the needs in the theatre. More immediately, there's a need to put in some more ladies' loos, which I'm sure many of us can agree. And there's a plan in place through that that business plan to do exactly that. To come back to the motion in front of us, I was glad to hear Councillor Maskell talking about the importance of financial propriety and doing this right. I'm sure we can together do this right. The requirement of the process for community asset transfers sets out that we need to demonstrate the public support and that we set out best value and deliver comprehensive independent valuations. All of those things are there in the business case. And we should be leaning into that. I would like, when we look at the motion, to have confirmation, that when we're taking further comments from the external auditor, that is done by supplying them with the full business case and the full valuation and the full subsequent side letter that have been produced at public expense to support that business case, and which so far have only been shared in limited form with the auditor. They have the right, I think, to see the full set of documents, and I would like to hear reassurance that that will go through to them for their consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got 3 this side, then I'm going back that side to Councillor Morgan. So I've got Councillor Horwood, Councillor Malone, and then Councillor Dyball. Oh no, I've got 4th one there, sorry, and then Councillor Darrington. And then I'll go back to Councillor Morgan.
Thank you very much, Chair. And certainly, I think none of us disagree with the spirit of the community asset transfer process. This council ultimately wouldn't have agreed to a community asset transfer process if it wasn't committed to doing everything it can to transfer locally valued assets into local hands. I think the challenge, as we all know, is whether it is legally possible and compliant with obviously the Minister's directive and obviously subsequently the auditor's advice as to whether we can do that. Launching the petition, and of course, I want to pay tribute to everyone who's engaged in the petition process. Councillors may or may not recall many years ago we had a petition for Swanley regarding the local plan process, and at that time it was done on paper, but there was some technical reason why the council couldn't accept it. And I remember one of our former colleagues, Councillor Anna Furr, saying, "If it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, then it is a duck." So I'm very grateful for the chairman and obviously Councillor Maskell to agree, sort of to accept the petition in the spirit it has, because I think it's genuinely showing we are committed to the stay. We realise it is a really important community issue for all of our residents. I think the challenge arises around sort of how can we transfer the stag, and obviously as has been mentioned by colleagues, we have looked at ways in which that could be done, and obviously the 100-year lease was previously proposed, and of course then the auditor's opinion was sought at that time. Now, obviously, for those of you who have read the the letter addressed to the Chief Executive from Grant Thornton in September 2025, it obviously highlights concerns around the process. As Councillor Shea rightly points out, it asks for a lot more clarification and information around the business case, the council's rationalisation of best value, but it has an incredibly serious tone to it. And unless legal sort of shake their heads that I can't read the Grant Thornton letter, it's important to, I think, read sort of from that advice. Nobody's like saying no. Okay. So again, again, with going to one of the paragraphs, like so in the governance and procedure, it says, should the council proceed with this course of action? And this is, of course, following the FIAC recommendation for the transfer lease that obviously Councillor Grint was talking about. Should the council proceed with this course of action without being able to demonstrate compliance with the best value obligations, we would need to consider the use of our statutory powers as auditor should we determine that the decision represents a significant governance failure or risk to the council. We do not take the use of these powers lightly, and we are sure the council does not want to be seen in the same light as other authorities locally and nationally where similar powers have been exercised. And then obviously going to the conclusions and recommendations, it highlights again the importance of, you know, sort of looking through the process, assessing it with best value. And as we know, best value following the 2003 disposals, you know, you can give things at less than best value. But it concludes that it asks for the confirmation from the Section 151 officer that the transaction represents the best values for Sevenoaks District Council. And that, I guess, is the challenge for all of us, because the Section 151 officer has a legal obligation to ensure that they are right in their mind in ensuring this council follows the process, follows the minister's directive, and follows the auditor's advice based on the ministerial directive that was obviously made at the start of local government reorganisation process. And as we know, we have had, ongoing discussions. I know officers have had ongoing discussions with Grant Thornton, specifically around the whole community asset transfer process. And obviously, we'll talk about that later in the meeting. But I think, as we know, what we are having tonight, there is no recommendation to not agree, the transfer of the stag in some form or the other. Now, I hear councillors, sort of concerns, especially around the lease. Obviously with a longer lease, I think, as they rightfully state, there's been, I think they mentioned around 1.5 million invested in the stag through funding. Discussions with the officers, between the officers and the town council, I think are at a point where they can, of course, move forward. But I think there is further legal information that officers are seeking with the external auditors, and of course with the business case as to how far this council can go. And I don't think actually councillors in this chamber are in disagreement that we all want to see a solution. Councillor Clack and members of that side rightfully. Sorry. Okay. Can I just ask clarity of the Section 151 officer on the latest update discussions with Grant Thornton, and if there is any further information that he can share with developments? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. If I may, yes. So I think firstly, it's worth reiterating what the role of the Section 151 officer is, as Council was touched on. It's to act in the best interest of this council and the successor unitary authority in regards to all its assets, liabilities and everything that relates to. And as the Chairman mentioned at the start, it's responsibility for all members in this chamber to act in the best interest of Sevenoaks District Council too. So regarding the Grant Thornton thing, I've recently written to them again to clarify their view based on what they said before, and also ask some follow-up questions linked to that and other community asset transfers and the general approach we're taking. So we're still waiting for that response on that. But obviously, the council did approve the disposals policy. In Sevenoaks Town Council's original application, they included an existing use valuation, and that links to Councillor Clack's point around, we have a valuation in our accounts of what the stag is worth. Since then, this council also gained an existing use value. I.e. the term existing use is key in that term. So that's what we're looking at, and I hope we can have decent discussions with Sevenoaks Town Council. I think lots of the stuff in recent weeks hasn't probably helped that process and it's probably hindered things that have gone through that process, but that's still the aim. And I want to basically end this process that we can come up with a decision that I have a clear conscience that the council make a good decision based on sound evidence and the way forward to how it should be done. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Adrian. Councillor Malone.
Sorry, point of information, Chair, if I may.
Councillor Shay.
Thank you. Just briefly, there have been no negotiations between Sevenoaks Town Council and Sevenoaks District Council since June last year.
Thank you. Councillor Malone.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to endorse Councillor Clack's suggestion that a discussion between Sevenoaks Town Council, District Council, the stag, looking for creative solutions with the benefit of the input of officers based on Grant Thornton's legal advice and legal input would be the appropriate way to go. I think, as you just heard from Councillor Horwood, there seems to be a sort of common desire across the chamber to find the right solution, a good solution. But I'd also ask all parties to approach that with an open mind, not just Cabinet. We are told definitively that a 100-year peppercorn lease doesn't work. I must say I'm somewhat sceptical of that. The stag seems to have developed and progressed pretty successfully over the last 15 years with the peppercorn lease of only 25 years. So I would just encourage everybody to approach further discussions with a completely open mind to find a creative solution that Councillor Clack scrub the tape on that bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Malone. If you wouldn't mind, that's it. Thank you. Councillor Dyball and then Councillor Darrington, then very patiently Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. As Cabinet Member for People and Places, my portfolio places a strong emphasis on leisure, culture, and the spaces that bring our communities together. Facilities like the Stag are not just buildings, they are vital community assets that support well-being, creativity, and social connection across Sevenoaks District. Have I got feedback on this? Oh, it sounds it from here, sorry. I've always been clear that the Stag as a theatre and community arts centre plays an important role in enriching the cultural lives of our towns and villages and in making the district a vibrant place to live, work and visit. Councillor Grint talked about the Stag being a valuable community asset, as did other members in their comments. And theatres and community arts centres provide more than entertainment. They create opportunities for people of all ages to come together to participate in cultural activities, to support local performers and organisations and to reconnect with one another. And this became even more important as we emerged from the isolation of the COVID-19 pandemic, when community spaces were essential in helping residents rebuild confidence, well-being and a sense of shared life after prolonged periods of lockdown and separation. Councillor White, Councillor Clack and others have previously mentioned the financial support that this council has given to the Stag. And during the COVID-19 crisis, when the cultural sector was amongst the hardest hit and the Stag was forced to close for an extended period, I worked with colleagues to respond positively to a request from Sevenoaks Town Council for support. At the time when the Town Council's reserves were close to depletion, Sevenoaks District Council stepped in to offer an interest-free loan facility of up to £220,000 to help safeguard the Stag's immediate future, covering essential recovery, maintenance and running costs. That decision reflected our shared commitment in supporting valued community infrastructure during an unprecedented national emergency, whilst also ensuring appropriate safeguards for public funds. We are serious about community arts provision in the district, and I remain committed to working constructively with partners to see the Stag retained as a much valued community asset, either through its existing lease arrangement, if we can work something out around that, or via a community asset transfer to ensure that cultural and leisure provision continues to play a central role in supporting strong, connected communities across Sevenoaks District. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Darrington, then Councillor Morgan, then I'm going back over to Councillor Cathy Morgan and then Councillor Stretford.
Thank you, Chair. Cultural venues like the Stag play an important role in supporting town centre vitality, local businesses and a strong sense of place. The Council supports its retention as a community asset, but this must be achieved through a community asset transfer process that is robust, realistic and compliant with the disposals policy, ensuring long-term viability rather than short-term risk. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience, Councillor Morgan.
Thank you very much. I want to declare an interest that I use the Stag as from Edenbridge. I like the Stag. My family have come up several times to see the pantos there and to see other things on there. From an Edenbridge perspective, and coming from outside, it is part of the district. It's not just an asset to the Seven Oaks town centre. It is a Seven Oaks wide district asset. And in fact, what I understand from people I know, that it's going to an asset for people like from Tunbridge Wells, or people, even though they've got their assembly rooms and whatever, it is an important asset. And the same sort of line that the Trinity perhaps operates in Tunbridge Wells. It's important to maintain this as a central community arts facility, and to do that in a non-commercial way, and the thing that breaks even essentially as it is constituted at the moment. When we talk about best value, the best value is actually to the Seven Oaks. It's not getting any value at the moment because it's not getting any money from the lease. It's just basically a small peppercorn rent. So giving it away, or handing, or so-called giving away and a transfer, is a non-event really, because it's not giving any value away. It doesn't have the value at the moment. The only value is in the fact that it owns the land and it owns the theatre, and that the confusion I think has come in this is that certain things that came in from various papers in the past and over the last sort of 6 or 8 months have become something which imply that it may be coming up for commercial to be sold off. Now, I'm glad to hear that Councillor Maskell has knocked that one completely on the head, and that it's not going to be put forward for commercial sale, and it's going to be retained in some form as a community asset. But so I think the best way forward in all this is very much as Councillor Clack has said. And again, I'm not sure I would ever inherently agree with Councillor Clack, but this time I do. I think that he's right. There has been a long gap where there's been no discussion, where things have been flying around in social media, where what was needed was still to sit down of good faith from the early days on FIAC, when it's put forward, and thrash out our best policy to bring forward to the council, and one that can be agreed on, by this town council, by representatives of the district council, by Grant Thornton, and by the people in the Stag themselves who run the model. It just seems to me incomprehensible that people of intelligence and goodwill can't sit down around a table and want to play games or put things in papers or say things in the media and social media, when all it needed was basically common sense and people to get down and talk. And I think that there's too much of this I would say, social media debate been going on here, and not enough of common sense. So I would like to support what Councillor Clack, Councillor Skinner and various others have said, that we should go forward and say, before any decision is finally made, let's get the parties together around a table with some urgency and come up with a joint policy that we can all agree on. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cathy Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me for not standing. The Stag supports health, well-being and social connection by providing shared cultural space for people of all ages. The Council's community asset transfer approach reflects the need to balance those benefits with financial responsibility, ensuring that any future arrangements are sustainable, legally sound and in line with the disposals policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stretfield.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think if another Liberal Democrat agrees with Councillor Clack, his reputation is going to be shot through. So, but I do find myself in the same position as my colleagues, that I very much endorse the idea that a new approach and the start of a negotiation that I think I heard Councillor Dybel saying that the District Council Cabinet would look at seriously, and to begin negotiations with the Town Council sounds like something we would all agree with. I, like others, have to declare an interest and you can see in my declared interest, I am the county councillor for the town. Indeed, my first members grant was for the Stag
town takeover after COVID. It is absolutely iconic. And I think the point I would come back to just initially is that whilst we as members do have to look after the interests of the district council, the district council's purpose is to look after the welfare of the residents. And it is that should be our driving purpose in this. And the Stag is a great example of where across party politics, there has been a broad agreement, as Councillor Grint mentioned, for the last 15 years about how this should be managed and run. I would, in my capacity as the county councillor, say that and this is the only point of disagreement that I have with what's been said this evening, there is a threat out there to the Stag, and it lies in the statutory obligations of the new unitary authority. And I can speak from personal experience in terms of trying to defend the sale of the AEC in the town. Again, an asset widely used across the district, very popular, but not part of the county councils or the upper tier authorities' statutory duties any longer, and therefore disposed of at a commercial rate and not retained for the use of the community. And that is where the threat lies. No, I am not suggesting for a moment that anyone in this room wishes to threaten the ongoing community use of the Stag. I am simply pointing out that by law, the new unitary authority will have to put the statutory responsibilities that it has above and beyond the community theatre that, whilst everybody would wish to defend, is not part of that process. And what we've talked about in terms of an ageing population and adult social care and all that kind of stuff earlier on this evening is absolutely to the point that we need to get this asset into the right place by negotiation with all the legal and auditing safeguards that have been spoken about this evening. And we need to retain an open mind on all sides about where that is. But it would appear at first glance that the place where there aren't those statutory obligations, but there has been proven good management is in the town council. But I will leave it to the good offices of the cabinet and the administration and the administration of the town council to come up with a sensible solution. But I very much look forward to the new approaches that Councillor Clack mentioned being looked at, and with, as somebody said, with a matter of urgency, because by the time we get to shadow elections in May 2027, there will be people out there with an interest in trying to retain those assets for other purposes. So there is a clock. I'm afraid to say there is a little bit of a threat, but I do think it's possible to find a solution in the time that we have available. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Cole, then I'm going over to Councillor Hudson.
Madam Chairman, thank you. As Cabinet Member for Housing and Health, I'm acutely aware that health and well-being are shaped not only by access to services and good quality housing, but by the strength of our communities and the opportunities people have to connect, participate and feel part of something shared. Community assets like the Stag play an important role in supporting those wider determinants of health across Sevenoaks District. The Stag provides inclusive cultural and social spaces that help reduce isolation, support positive mental health and encourage people to leave their homes, engage with others and take part in activities that enrich their lives. For many residents, accessible cultural venues are a vital part of maintaining independence, confidence and a sense of belonging. This is particularly important in an era where loneliness and poor mental well-being are growing public health challenges. From a housing perspective, creating successful and sustainable communities goes far beyond the provision of simply bricks and mortar. Residents need access to nearby facilities that support well-being, identity and connection. A thriving community arts centre contributes to healthier neighbourhoods, helps anchor local communities and enhances the overall livability of the district. These factors are central to preventing health problems, reducing pressure on services and supporting long-term resilience. The Stag, therefore, is not only a cultural asset, but a health and well-being asset for the district. retaining and supporting such facilities, either through the current lease or via a community asset transfer at existing use value, aligns directly with our ambitions to promote healthier, more connected communities and to ensure that Sevenoaks District is a place where people can thrive, not just live. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I guess I should immediately declare that I, as one or two others in this chamber, are members of Sevenoaks District Arts Council. And also as part of the People and Places team, I, with others, was tasked to look at what the implication for arts and culture and the voluntary service would be in the future under the new unitary authority. And as Councillor Stratfield has drawn our attention to, it is quite clear that some of these things will not form a strong part of the statutory duty of the new authority. And we do need to protect and preserve where we can for the district. So I would urge members here today to implement what Councillor Clack has so sensibly put forward, that we get together round the table, perhaps with our Section 151 officer and other officers concerned, and get this matter sorted out as soon as possible, please. Thank you.
Councillor Manston.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'd just like to, I think there's been excellent remarks tonight about the stag, and I also want to echo the fact that it does feel like the stag belongs to all of us as a district. So despite being geographically quite away from the stag, I know that a lot of people in my ward do travel here and use it frequently. And I'd like to point out that as we've talked about why it's the importance of preserving the theatre for itself and its own provision for the community. We've talked about well-being and the wider sort of arts provision. And I also want to add in the element of local economy and jobs provision, and also the effect on the wider high street in Sevenoaks, because I think the overarching effects of having such a quality service here are much wider than it at first seems. So I just want to add in those extra benefits that the stag brings to us all in the district. Thank you.
Councillor Barnett.
I feel I should start selling some T-shirts. I agree with Clack, but effectively, yes, I have to say I think that's probably the most sensible way forward here, and I tend to agree with that approach. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Maskell, back to you. Oh no, sorry, Councillor Robinson. Well, nearly you, Councillor Maskell.
Thank you, Chair. I will terribly sorry, but I'm going to buy one of those T-shirts as soon as you can order it, James. Mine's a large, depending on the shape. But thanks for organising it for the V-neck version. So there are just a couple of things I wanted to pick up. Councillor Dyball is absolutely right to mention the offer of the loan to the stag, but as I understand it, the Town Council weren't able to take it up because it would have been illegal to accept the loan of the 200,000. So I just think that we just need to put that in there, that it was a very generous offer at the time. Secondly, there is something that we haven't yet mentioned, and is that as a community asset, it is not just the social and cultural value of the stag, it is an economic catalyst for our town and the surrounding area. If I can use a technical term that we economists use, it has a multiplier effect. A pound spent there becomes a lot more than £1 in the surrounding area, and it's not just the shops, although we like the shops and the restaurants and cafes. Can I draw your attention to the fact that our third form of income after council tax and business tax is parking, and people come and park in our car parks to go to the stag and go to the restaurants and have a little drink and then maybe buy some clothes. And what we have is what we have realised since COVID is that town centres that flourish and have strength for the future are the ones that offer a range of things and a range of services. So what with our library and the leisure centre and the Stag, there is a lot for people to come to Sevenoaks for. We're very, very fortunate with that. I'd just like us to remember that economic multiplier effect. Two last points, and I'm actually going to go back to the motion in front of us because there are a couple of points I'd like to raise. The Cabinet will decide on the application to transfer the Stag Theatre in accordance with the disposals policy. Well, I would have thought it was unconstitutional to do anything else other than act in accordance with the policy we've already got. So to some extent, I'm not sure that needs to be said. However, I find it unnerving when the word disposal is used for a transfer. There is a genuine difference between transferring an asset between public authorities and disposing of it, which implies sale. So I wondered if we could look at the wording there. The final point I wanted to make is about the auditor. Sitting on audit and having read the auditor's report, you can all see it. It was the auditor's report referred to the Stag in the report published on the 10th of February, sorry, not published 10th of February, which we reviewed at audit on the 10th of February. And as Councillor Horwood said, he read exactly what the auditor put in their auditor's report. What is clear from the two audit meetings then and more recently is that that advice was only in the most general terms. And I would like to ask a really clear question, and I really hope that Cabinet can answer. Will you promise us this evening, promise us all in this chamber, that you will send Grant Thornton and will make sure that they see and form an opinion on the following documents: the full business case, the full valuation documents, and the full side letter, because it is only then that we know that their advice will be pertinent to Councillor Clack's excellent suggestion. Thank you.
Councillor Maskell, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. It is clear that from both sides that the value of the Stag is very clear to the local community and ourselves. I would answer every question, but that might take us another few hours. But I think that if I can just sort of summarize, we've got there is the value for all of us of this asset, and it's vitally important, as Councillor Clack says, and others. I don't want to just leave it with Councillor Clack, but others, that we come to a conclusion on this. But what need to emphasize and for everybody to understand and to trust and to work in good faith around the fact that there are difficulties for the district council in how they go about working on this transaction. Councillor Morgan, I totally agree. But part of the problem is that a large amount of discussion on social media and a large amount of responses around this issue have not been helpful. The negotiation should be done on the basis of understanding what the difficulties are with the district council and what the difficulties are with the Sevenoaks Town Council. And that needs to be done on a technical level. It needs to be understood and trusted above all. And there has been a disconnect as a result of a large amount of information that's been passed through a range of sources that has not been true. There's been a lot of reading between the lines, which I am assured by officers is not true. Those conclusions that have come by reading between the lines have been harmful to the negotiation process. The result of that is that there has been possibly a breakdown in faith. And I think it's important that if we truly believe the way forward for this asset to be sustained, we need to sit down, as you all say, in a way that's constructive. And it needs to be done in a way that people trust each other. And we will move forward on that basis. And I hope that we all understand that. I just want to say really fully that we have to believe our 151 officer. We have to believe the audit process, the external audit process, because that is what 151 officer has to work to, and he has the responsibility for that. We have the responsibility. We can say to the 15 officer, oh, no, we don't believe you. We don't think you're right, etc., etc. But that then puts us into a problem, us individually, going forward. And there would be consequences of that. So we must take that into account as well. So we will obviously move forward, and it says in the motion that the council notes that the cabinet will decide upon the application to transfer the Stag Theatre in accordance with the disposal policy, and only when all necessary evidence, including further comments from the external auditors, has been gathered. So that process is continuing. It hasn't stopped. It won't stop. It will move forward, and negotiation will take place. And as long as I say, that discussion takes place in good faith. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are voting on item 1 and 2 of 6D on that motion. I don't know if anybody needs me to read that out, or we're quite clear on that. Thank you. So those in favour, please show your hands. That's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you for your contributions, every one of you. It's 9:05. I think you've done very well without being too fidgety, and I think it's probably now to have a 10-minute break. We'll resume at 9:15. Thank you. Members, we've gone past 9:15. If I can ask you to take your seats, please. Item 7. Thank you, members. Item number 7. To consider the following reports from the Chief Executive or other corporate directors on matters requiring the attention of the Council. Item 7A, Returning Officers Report. Councillor Maskell.
I move that the contents of the report be noted.
Is this seconded?
Very happy to second, Madam Chair.
Councillor Maskell, would you like to say anything else?
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple of things to say. Firstly, to recognise and thank officers for the smooth running of the by-elections in Hextable and Knockholt and Halstead wards, and also to congratulate the newly elected members to both wards, Councillor Tony Marshall and Councillor Lee Allen. I look forward to their contributions to the Conservative group and the wider council. I wish also to say that the contributions of both Councillor Kitchener and Councillor Williamson will never be forgotten, but I have no doubt that Councillor Allen and Councillor Marshall will continue to build on their legacy.
Thank you. Is there any debate on that? Right, then we're asked to note the report. Could I have a show of hands for all those in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. So that is item 7B done. No, sorry, 7A, sorry, got ahead of myself. 7B, Part 13, Officers' Responsibility and Declarations. Councillor Maskell.
I move that the Council confirms the revised delegations to officers to be set out in Part 13 of the Constitution as set out in the supplementary agenda, and B, delegate authority to the monitoring officer to make any further necessary consequential changes to Part 13 of the Constitution.
Is this seconded?
Again, I'm happy to second, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cole. Councillor Maskell.
I have nothing to add.
Is there any debate? Can I have a show of hands for all those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Right, we've now swapped the two over, item 8 and 9. So we are now doing the motion first. Councillor Lehman.
Could I move the motion that's on the agenda paper in my name?
Rather than read the whole thing out, I would be happy to accept that as your suggestion. Thank you. So we are now going into an hour for the motion. So the time is 8:20. 9. Sorry, got ahead was 9:23. Councillor Lehman.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I fear that some of my thunder may have been stolen by earlier events and Councillor Maskell's clever ruse of putting down a motion of his own on a similar subject. But there we go. I think this motion might help the council move forward in a very constructive way. It amplifies and clarifies the council's policy on community asset transfers that we agreed in April 2025, and it returns us to the position that most of us thought it was when the policy originally passed. So in the next hour, I hope we can convince Councillor Maskell that he is worrying about the wrong things. He can put away his FAQs and fact sheets, and that we can work across the council to make good progress. Community asset transfers are not unusual in local government. A quick Google reveals dozens of councils that deal with them routinely and with no great fuss. That's because community asset transfers simply ask us to assess whether assets are located at the most sensible and productive layer of government. For instance, it makes no sense for two authorities to own and therefore maintain separate playgrounds or open spaces within a few yards of each other. And to an extent, as Councillor Grint has signalled earlier, this has been recognised informally by our council over the years, as it has delegated many responsibilities and the costs for upkeep, maintenance and stewardship of those assets to parish and town councils, and indeed to a local community theatre. Asset transfer, arguably, simply makes these arrangements more formal, stable and responsive to public priorities. To give one example, in Sevenoaks, the transfer of Greatness Rec to the town council a few decades ago, with a dowry, created for us a public park that is well maintained and used, home to a thriving football club and the beneficiary of considerable public investment. Now, local government reorganisation has given these questions more urgency. LGR adds to the risk that assets will be pulled away from local communities to a much larger authority and that key connections and local engagement will be lost. As Laura Trott has pointed out, a new unitary authority could also easily dispose of the assets for development or for cash. In some parts of the country, the new unitary recognised this and transferred a large number of assets in its first year or so. In our case, all of us, I thought it better to review the asset portfolio in advance of LGR, ensuring we hoped maximum local input and sensitivity. And we underlined that with a commitment agreed by the council around about the same time to, quote, empower parish and town councils and wherever practical to devolve decisions and service delivery closer to local communities. That's an important principle that we agreed, and it becomes even more so in the context of LGR. Now, the guidance provided by government and our auditors don't give legal advice, by the way, they provide guidance, is reflected in the motion before you. And if there's any doubt about it, I will happily go to any workshop or seminar and we can have this out in detail. It does have a serious tone, as Councillor Forward has said. But I have to say, some of the fact check information, I think, is actually wrong, and we need to bottom this out. The guidance is reflected in the motion before you. Clearly, transfers, according to the guidance, are legitimate when certain conditions are met, and those requirements are set out in our motion. And that includes, and the
The possibilities open to the council includes the freedom to choose not to impose charges on the receiving parish and town councils. After all, these are transfers, not disposals. They are public assets already paid for by the public, who shouldn't, in my view, be charged again. What has this council been doing up until now? In effect, it's been selling public assets to town and parish councils, sometimes assets that these councils have been maintaining and investing in themselves, divesting this council of liabilities and costs, creating new costs for parishes and charging them for the privilege, boosting the district council's balance sheet by tens, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds with a windfall cash injection, sucking money away from the parishes where it can no longer be used for other local projects or services, and all in a way that wasn't flagged in the policy and was not mentioned in the press release that went out from our council last week. Do we need this money so badly? I hope and believe we don't. Colleagues will go into these issues in more detail during the debate. My conclusion is this. We all have an interest in getting this right for the future of the people of the district. Thus far, it hasn't delivered. Let's move forward in good faith, transparently, saying what we mean and meaning what we say, so that important assets and services are secured and sustained for the long-term benefit of our communities. And to do so, we should pass this motion.
Thank you. We now go into debate. Councillor Maskell.
As Councillor Lehman says, we've sort of covered an awful lot of this and got to the root issue. The Council welcomes the intent of the motion and reaffirms its commitment, as agreed by full Council on the 19th of March 2025, to working constructively with town and parish councils to empower communities and support strong local decision making. Some misleading information has been issued by other parties, which is not helpful, which we've already discussed. The Council is clear, however, that the disposals policy adopted by Council and its community asset transfer process applies to physical and legal assets only, whether freehold or leasehold, and does not extend to the automatic transfer or devolution of services. And I apologise again for going over the same issue again, but it's important to keep emphasising. Decisions relating to service delivery, commissioning or operational responsibility remain separate matters and must be considered through appropriate governance, financial and statutory frameworks. The Council recognises the role that CAT can play in promoting economic, social and environmental well-being and notes that the existing framework already allows assets to be transferred at less than best consideration, where this can robustly be demonstrated in accordance with Section 123 of the Local Government Act 1972 and relevant guidance. All applications for community asset transfers are therefore considered on their individual merits, subject to due diligence, governance, legal advice and financial appraisal. In doing so, members must continue to discharge their Sevenoaks District Council fiduciary duties and ensure that decisions are lawful, procedurally robust, financially prudent, taking account of risks, liability, and long-term sustainability. In the best interests of Sevenoaks District Council, its residents, and any future authority arising from local government reorganisation, that is an element that was clearly identified by the 151 officer, and it's clearly one that we kind of forgotten. And that is our responsibility as well. In the context of LGR, it is particularly important that asset-related decisions do not prejudice the financial position, governance arrangements, or service resilience of a future council, nor create arrangements that could place unreasonable burdens or constraints on successor authorities. That's why up and down the country, assets of relatively low value are the ones that have been transferred. The council remains committed to engaging with town and parish councils in a constructive and transparent way, and will continue to welcome expressions of interest from community asset transfers, consider proposals that clearly demonstrate public support, long-term sustainability, and measurable community benefit. And I'd just like to sort of identify that there have been up and down the country authorities that have turned around and said, no, we don't want the assets because we can't sustain them. And there have also been instances where assets have been returned to the authorities because in due course, they found that they cannot sustain those facilities. And I'd just like to emphasize that we don't know what's going to happen in several years' time. Many of the updated clauses suggested are already supported, outlined within the adopted policy, and should be demonstrated by the applicant within their submitted business case. However, the council cannot fetter its discretion by committing to transfers in advance, nor by adopting blanket presumptions in favour of transfer. Each decision must be taken on a case-by-case basis by members through appropriate decision-making body informed by professional advice and assessment of value for money, risk and future impact. And that, I would suggest, is where we have the issue in terms of where we have some disagreements. This balanced approach ensures the community asset transfers can continue to support local empowerment while safeguarding the interests of the council, its residents and future local government arrangements. Thank you.
Perfect timing. Councillor Clayton, then Councillor Shay.
Thank you very much, Chairman. What do the following have in common? Parks in Bradford and Avon, Bridgewater, Shrewsbury, St Austell, Minehead, Penzance. Community buildings, including theatres, in Stroud, St Austell, Glastonbury, Bradford and Avon, Minehead, Faversham. Markets in Saltash, Kettering, Knaresborough, Bridgewater. Play areas in these towns and many more. They have all been transferred from boroughs, districts, counties or new unitaries to town councils in the last 3 years, including some in this year. Many more have gone to parishes. They have all been transferred without a sale fee, and in some cases have come with a dowry to help make up for earlier maintenance shortfalls. This is going on across the country. The Mayor of Tandridge, our next door neighbour, told me last week they have transferred parks, community centres, heritage sites, car parks and more before they get swallowed up in East Surrey. They're a year ahead of us, of course, because they've got their unitary shadow reactions next week. So much of the country is ahead of us on this, and it's not helpful to pretend otherwise. And in much of England, the judgment is being made, where are these services and assets best managed? What form of management is likely to deliver best value to residents and local taxpayers? That's the test. Now, the residents of Sevenoaks will be astonished that anybody thinks Hollybush Rec, bought for the town in 1910 with residents' donations from Sevenoaks School, is best managed strategically by a remote authority based in Maidstone or Tunbridge. We already have a strategic sports operator for cricket, rugby and football and other sports for Sevenoaks town area, at the Vine, Rayleigh Field, Knoll Paddock, Greatness and elsewhere. It's the town council. They would be amazed at the idea that Sevenoaks Market, managed locally for 800 years and bought by the town in 1925, would be more successfully managed by a remote operator. The last time that this council tried that, it was a catastrophe. To quote Billy Westley, the stall holder who sells fruit and veg in 6 different markets every day of the week, we often felt as though a succession of remote private operators were interested only in maximising their returns while contributing nothing to the market before disappearing with their profits. The decline of markets run by private operators can be seen across the country. In contrast, Sevenoaks Town Council has been outstanding in its administration of the market. It is also clear that Sevenoaks residents strongly support continued Town Council management. He says it would be deeply unfortunate if upcoming changes to local government undid the progress that has been made. You have something special here. Please do not risk losing it by handing the market over to a remote, uninterested body or by merging it with other very different and distant markets. You have seen the consequences of such decisions within your own district. We therefore ask for your support, he says, in ensuring that Sevenoaks Town Council remains the administrator of both the Saturday and Wednesday markets. They are granted the rights necessary to continue running this historic and valued community assets. The message from Billy and the other stallholders and the sports operators in town is keep it local. Keep it local. And that is the intention of this motion. Don't forget that it's the people of Sevenoaks who have made most of these assets and services thrive. They have, in many cases, actually given them to the town, and the same is true for parishes and towns across the district. Keep it local.
Thank you. Councillor Shea.
Thank you, Chair. I don't believe this motion is particularly radical. It's simply asking that the council embeds what Parliament has already empowered us to do and what we committed to do just over a year ago. I'd like to set out a few of the legal frameworks that support it, because I think it's important that as members we understand that the motion doesn't ask us to act outside of the law, but it asks us to act within it. So firstly, there is the Local Government Act of 1972. And Section 123 of that Act gives councils the power to dispose of land. Importantly, it provides that a council may dispose of land for less than best consideration with Secretary of State consent. That power exists precisely because Parliament recognised that there are circumstances where the public interest is best served by a transfer at less than market value, rather than by maximising a capital receipt. This motion doesn't circumvent price considerations. It exercises a power Parliament has deliberately created for us to use. It was followed by Circular 0603, catchily named, 2003, which amends that Section 123 from 72. It's the key guidance on disposals at undervalue. It makes clear that local authorities can transfer assets to other public bodies and community organisations at nil, nominal or less than best consideration where there's a demonstrable community benefit without Secretary of State consent up to an undervalue limit of £2 million. Actually, I'll just note here that Eastleigh Council has recently agreed to transfer their theatre, which is worth more than £2 million in that undervalue, and has received Secretary of State consent. So it's explicitly where the transfer secures or promotes economic, social or environmental well-being, or where it relates to the authority's community strategy and requires a professional valuation. It's government policy for handling exactly the sort of asset transfers being considered through the policy here tonight. Thirdly is best value legislation. Points 2 and 3 of the motion tonight relate to best value considerations. Best value and best consideration are different beasts. The Local Government Act of 1999 defines best value not as the highest financial return, but as continuous improvement in the delivery of services, particularly with regard to economy, efficiency and effectiveness. Where a town or parish council can sustain and develop a community asset more effectively than we can, at lower cost or better long-term outcomes given LGR, transferring that asset can be assessed as best value. MHCLG guidance confirm it. Transfers may be progressed where, to use the jargon of the legislation, they improve the economic, social or environmental well-being of the district. MHCLG's current FAQ on their website on devolution states that councils may wish to collaborate with parish and town councils to determine how they most effectively manage local assets in future arrangements. Reading their advice and I have, I'm afraid, repeatedly, and that of Grant Thornton to the wider sector, it's clear that their intent is not to prevent transfers, but to ensure that any and all transactions undertaken during this period continue to be done so properly, with the normal level of evidence, transparency and scrutiny that we would expect, and capable of approval at audit. In our process for applicants for community asset transfers, we've asked parishes to provide independent valuations. We've asked them to demonstrate through their business cases how the transfer demonstrates social value, continuous improvement and best value to the public purse. They've written our best value assessments for us. The motion adds 4 sensible amendments to our policy to help us deliver the devolution that we agreed to here last March. It's measured, it's legally sound, and it delivers on a promise that this council made to its residents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Skinner, did I see your hand waving or not?
You didn't yet, no.
It might be coming. Oh, no, it's not coming to you yet. Councillor Purvis and then Councillor Stretfield.
Right, thank you. I'd like to say a few words about the value of Hollybush Recreation Ground or Park to the local community. I know many residents have written to the leader expressing their concerns over the future of Hollybush Park. The park has great value as an open space which contributes to the well-being of both local residents and the many visitors from the wider district. The health and well-being of our community is hugely important to all of us. Hollybush Park is a vital community asset used by a large number of people. It's a green lung with a playground for children, a hockey pitch, bowls rinks, tennis and padel courts, and a space to simply relax and walk, all essential to our mental health and well-being. The key question here is, do we want our much valued park being managed locally by the Sevenoaks Town Council, who have clearly laid out their intentions regarding the park's future? Or do we want it managed by a distant unitary authority with absolutely no idea what its plans or intentions may be? Sevenoaks District Council have already intimated there is potential for building development in the park. Who knows if this will be seen as a revenue stream for the new unitary authority? The picture is clear. Either transfer the park to Sevenoaks Town Council, who would work with residents so we can all enjoy its wellbeing benefits, or leave it to the unitary authority whose intentions are unknown. There's no doubt in my mind that a transfer will be justified on social and environmental grounds and it will have massive public support. Thank you.
Councillor Stratfield.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. And I think you've heard from colleagues the level of technical detail that they have gone into in order to show that it is going to be possible to make the transfer using the frameworks that exist to us. And certainly Councillor Maskell seems to be extremely keen that we adhere to the legal, audit, financial, fiduciary responsibilities that are before us. I think it is fair to say that whilst this motion acknowledges all of those things, and it certainly acknowledges the proper place for the 151 officer to offer advice, but what we need to do in this chamber is to give political leadership to the problem, and that is because the people in the gallery who we serve are going to be asking a very, does it kind of pass the silly Billy test from the stag? Are we doing what they want? We can talk about all of the technical details, all of the audit reports, all of the fiduciary duties, but ultimately what they are looking for us to achieve is the safety of the stag. And I said earlier, and it bears repeating, that the upper tier authority, because of statutory responsibilities, has disposed of £25 million of assets this year alone. How can anyone think, regardless of not being able to have the crystal ball and see into the future, that we know what the statutory duties are coming to the Unitary Council are? We know that all of the assets that we're talking about this evening are not part of those statutory duties, and therefore we can see already what is likely to happen. And the people who are watching this are saying, what are you going to do to safeguard it for our common purpose and for the purpose that it currently exists? And that is what should be driving us as the primary issue. And then all of the other things that are contained in the motion with regard to ensuring that it is technically feasible, audit and all of those kind of responsibilities are made good. But the primary driver for this needs to be political. Now, I am not talking about it being party political. I'm talking about it being driven by the politicians across party in this chamber, because that is what we want to get to. That is the purpose of this motion, is to be able to agree across party that we need to have a new and better way of doing it, because that is what people who are watching and who have signed the petitions and are worried about the stag and worried about Hollybush and all of the other assets across the district really, really want. And we forget that at our peril, because we will be at their mercy in this time next year, and they will make a judgment on whether we have succeeded on their behalf or we haven't.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Sorry, guys, the loving can't go on forever. It's been too embarrassing. Yeah, so I can't quite support this motion because I think it's too wide ranging. You know, I mean, I think I've lost the page now. Paragraph 3 talks about not withholding or sorry, I've lost the wording. Anyway, what paragraph 3 says. Because it seems like perhaps it allows parishes and towns to just sort of cherry pick the things they want. The council can't unreasonably withhold it if they want it. So it doesn't seem like, it seems it tips the balance too much the other way. So that's my sort of problem with it. But if there is something, you know, a community asset that we can legally transfer and we want to, but we can't because of the policy, then I think we should be open to looking at the aspects of the policy that prevent that from happening. If that's the desired outcome, and the only thing that's stopping it is the policy. And I think Councillor Lehman referenced a workshop or a meeting or whatever. So maybe that was in that if this motion fell, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't still have discussions to look at it in case it's stopping us from doing something we want to do and can do, legally do. So for that reason, I can't support it. But I do hope that we, again, can work together. And if we need to overcome something, a hiccup which stops us, that then we can resolve that hiccup together. Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Morgan.
Yes, I'd just like to make a comment on what Councillor Clack has just said. I'm just suggesting he should come over and join our side. Because I think, again, coming back to this is a case of why can't we resolve this by getting people together and talking sensibly about it? Looks like to me that all discussion about, and particularly coming from Councillor Maskell, it's all about process, procedure, and fiduciary responsibility and whatever. And while I agree that's important, there has to be a way around this to making sure that the requirements of our residents around that. Now, most of these assets have been given to the council by people in the past, or in the council inherited. In fact, the market has been inherited by Sevenoaks because it was actually there before the Sevenoaks was there. The market existed. Therefore, we have a responsibility to the past and to the future to make sure that the residents can use the assets which they have either been involved with or given with or donated to the council. This is our responsibility to pass on to the future what we inherited from the past in a sensible, rational way. And therefore, I think we should get around, again, as we've been before, start talking about rationing, and start getting up with solutions. And also stop implying that there may be developments going on, there may be commercial aspects of it, and suggesting this is a possibility. When generally when we're told in here that this is not the case. We're told by Hollybush there is going to be no development, but that has not been the implication in some of the reports I've read down in Edenbridge and heard about, that there may be apartment developments going on. And I've been asked about that a couple of times, about what's happening in Sevenoaks and so on. So I think we need to go to a real rational basis, consider what our residents actually want and what our residents will expect for us to pass on into the future as a community asset. Thank you.
There wasn't any hands and I went back and there was 2. And I just remind members we are halfway through. So can you just keep it to the wording of the motion and the points that are being raised in the motion and not to repeat too much, otherwise we will run out of time. Councillor Grent and then Councillor Gustard.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I cannot support this motion. I believe that the District Council already has the power to make the transfers that it wishes to make and that it should make, as has been described by some of the previous speakers in relation to Hollybush, for example, and market rights as another example. I believe those are transfers of assets that we should undertake, and I believe that the District Council has got the power to make such transfers under its existing rules. I don't believe that these new proposed rules will enhance the ability of the District Council to act in the way that it wishes. And on the contrary, I believe that these new rules may fetter the ability of the District Council to act in the way that it believes is best, and therefore I cannot support this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Gustard and then Councillor Cole.
Thank you. So in the debate earlier, I heard at least 3 references to the fact that we all agree that any transfers should happen in line with the agreed disposal policy. And obviously that disposal policy came before us and was agreed before LGR. And what we're discussing tonight are community asset transfers, not disposals. And I hate to agree with Councillor Clack again this evening, but I think he's right to suggest that it's the disposal policy that is perhaps causing us overly complicating this process. The legislation is there that allows us to make these community asset transfers, but the policy is making it difficult. As it currently stands, it says that all operational assets should not be transferred, income generating assets should be retained, and assets with development potential should be held. And when we apply those tests, then it's not surprising that it makes it very difficult to find reasons and to qualify the reasons for those transfer. So what this motion does is it's an attempt to kind of make those amendments to the disposals policy so that we can act within the agreed legislation. You know, I'm not going to repeat all the comments made tonight about, you know, the risk of LGR and other councils that have already put these transfers in place. But just to say that I hope people will read this motion and they will vote in favour of it, because the time to act is now while we have the power to do so. Thank you.
I'm going to Councillor Cole, then Councillor Thornton.
Chair, thank you. And I welcome the motion submitted by Councillor Lehman, as indeed I've welcomed, perhaps enjoyed is not the right term, but enjoyed the dialogue across the chamber this evening, because it shows a breadth of agreement that we all hold the stag, particularly in high regard, and we all want to get the right outcome. Of course, now we're widening the discussion into the remit of community asset transfers, for which the policy that this authority runs at the moment is based on sound legal advice and financial guidance, and it's been so far, thus far, been found not to be wanting. And I have deep concern that to change a policy for which there's no real legal basis for doing so midway through a process is probably not the best time to change course. And part of that concern would reflect around the fact that the motion offers suggestions, and Councillor Lehman has obviously given a lot of time and thought to putting that together, but for which the whole effects, should the motion be passed, cannot be determined or gauged by this chamber in a few short minutes this evening. It should be considered in the wider context, in more time, through the official routing, through the official forums and committee process. So I'm afraid, much as I recognise and applaud you for submitting the motion, I'm afraid I won't be able to support it.
Councillor Thornton.
Thank you, Chair. I too am not in a position to support this, and the reasons for that are, I think, have been highlighted by a lot of people. Yes, we've been in really good dialogue tonight, and it's been really interesting seeing actually that none of us are too far away. It's really a question of how we go about it and get it right. We do have a disposals policy, but that then judges whether something is capable to be transferred or not. So personally, I don't have an issue with that. What I do have an issue with is us making decisions on policy on the fly on a night, where one set of people are very well briefed and very well up to speed because they've got all the information in front of them to make that decision. We have processes in place to make those changes, and we don't feel that's right. And I hear what Councillor Cole was saying as well. Just then, is it the right time to make that? And we've actually adjudged some by one policy, not the other anyway. What I totally object to is the trial by social media that's been going on. In fact, I raised a question at Cabinet last week, which is, well, what's true here? And if I'm confused, what the hell the public thinking? At the moment, they're thinking SDC bad, Sevenoaks Town Council good, because all they're hearing is this is a big disaster and SDC are not taking opportunities that they could be at this stage. Well, I'm seeing SDC being very responsible with the way that they're going around this. They are following a policy which they have put in place. And as I said, this isn't not the right agenda item to be making those changes here and now, the motion. I think we need to get around a table once we know what our auditors are saying, once we know what 151 officers are saying, once we've honed in on the policy, once we've got the best values that we have to look at and everything else, then yes, let's have some dialogue. Let's get that right at that stage. But this is not the right place to making these kind of decisions on the fly tonight. And I think if we can cool it down on social media, because it's not a case of good and bad, this is complex and we've got to get it right. There is no cliff edge. At the moment, the protections in place on some of these assets are due to continue. And I think what people are also forgetting is, don't forget that even people in this room are likely to be representing residents on a future authority. They're not going to be quiet if they start messing about with it. There will still be representation at that stage as well. But that's my reason for not supporting this stage on the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Horwood.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. When local government reorganisation was announced, I think many of us had very mixed feelings of confusion, apprehension and disbelief, but saw it as an opportunity for a complete rationalisation of local assets. And of course, why wouldn't we have all got excited and expected that? Because of course, the word devolution has dominated government speeches over the past 2 years. And indeed, that word was used extensively in the government's own general election manifesto. However, after the election, the term devolution quickly metamorphosised into the far duller and less ambitious phrase local government reorganisation. And as we have come to find out, the opportunities we all initially got excited about have been removed entirely from the equation. And as we know, the government invited councils to propose their own reorganisation as we've gone through the process. But alongside that invitation, specifically sent out instructions in July 2025, warning councils and named the transfer of local assets as something that could fetter the future decisions of the new councils. Now, as we know, that ministerial instruction has formed the basis of the restrictions and caution in all the advice from the local government auditors, Grant Thornton. And whilst I know many of us feel incredibly frustrated and disappointed at this government instruction, and it is a complete contradiction to the term devolution. I would say, and I don't disagree with certain members, that this council hasn't moved quickly to create a community asset transfer that complies with that ministerial instruction. I'm actually incredibly proud of our officers who have navigated a very tough and fast-moving environment on top of their full-time day jobs where they were doing before local government reorganisation popped up, and have been walking a very tight rope trying to balance members' ambitions with that ministerial instruction and obviously the consequential advice from Grant Thornton. Earlier, I highlighted the complexity of the matter in relation to the stag, the auditor's letter, and as we've heard, obviously, from the Section 151 officer, we're still continuing to have dialogue with the auditors to try and understand what is in the art of the possible. As I've sort of highlighted, the guidance and tone from their earlier letter around, what we were previously considering around the stag is incredibly clear, and the consequences of going against that advice is even more clear. I think it's also important to point out because sort of members have said we've not moved at pace. We haven't, we essentially been community minded in this. That there are some councils that have chosen not to have a community assets transfer at all. Our own Kent County Council does not have a community asset transfer policy, nor has made any priority in trying to write one, meaning communities cannot benefit at all from acquiring any KCC public land in our local communities. So I have immense sympathy with members, and it's what I would have liked government have done in this opportunity of reorganisation, is to be explicitly clear that now was the time for councils to rationalise local assets. But the ministerial instruction is incredibly clear, and if you look obviously under the financial duties in the context of local government reorganisation, there's a whole section that highlights, as I mentioned earlier, about the community asset transfer policy fettering the decisions of future local authorities. Members will know that I'm leader of Swanley Town Council, and I too have had assets in my town not transferred to our town council that we would have liked. Of course, I am disappointed that we couldn't have everything and have had to pay the existing community rate for the parcels of land. But I feel that is compliant with the national framework that we're working to, and of course that ministerial instruction, and is the least risk option of not securing these parcels of land at all. We are indeed happy to proceed, knowing that we will acquire these lands under the current process. But what I would say is, obviously, if we were to change the policy, it would invite the reassessment of all the parcels of land, or many of the parcels of land that we especially have been agreed on existing community use value, not just in Swanley, but in other areas across our district. And that could certainly take a significant amount of time to get back to where we were. We would essentially be going back to stage one. The officers would have to go back to look through, the rationalisation, to look through about best value and community value, and that presents a significant risk to the transfer of those parcels of land. So for that reason, I cannot support the amendments to the policy tonight. I think it's better to proceed with a policy that we know is compliant, rather than risk the transfers at this relatively late stage of the local government reorganisation process. Thank you.
Right. Oh, no. Councillor Skinner.
I think we've still got some time. I think we're in a hole, and I can't agree with Councillor Cole that this is all working. Self-evidently, it's not. We're debating this issue. There has been a lot of public conversation, public angst, public concern. We've got a petition of 7,000 people on one of the assets. Clearly, this isn't working, which to me is bizarre, because what I've heard this evening is pretty much agreement across the chamber that we want to continue with the agreement that we had last year. And I'm going to read it out. Empower and strengthen town and parish councils within the district, and where possible, devolve services and responsibilities so that decisions are taken and services delivered as close to local communities as practical. I'm not surprised that we all agree to that. I suspect all of us, certainly most of us, also sit on town and parish councils. We understand ourselves exactly what this means. This isn't sort of something which is happening out there. This is happening to each of us in our day-to-day existence. We get this. I think I've identified two areas where there may be disagreement with the cabinet, and I'm going to try and articulate them. One is in respect to the role of the Section 151 officer. I see the role of the Section 151 officer as being an extraordinarily important one, but one that is a traffic light, one that is saying stop, or one that is saying you really ought to be rather careful here, or one that's saying, yep, that's fine. It's not the job of the Section 151 officer. I suspect that Adrian is thankful for this, to be actually driving the car, to be saying the direction in which we're going. And this goes to Councillor Stretfield's point about it's the decision of the of councillors to set the political course. All of us absolutely understand the importance of staying within the legal, fiduciary, accounting, policy guidelines. Of course, we've got to do that. And it's when we're going off those guidelines that Section 151 officers should tell us, but the direction is for us. The other point I want to just pick up was Councillor Horwood's point about fettering future authorities. I wonder if we would also be fettering future authorities if we were ladening on them the responsibility for managing the grass cutting at Hollybush Recreation, if we're requiring them to manage detailed local issues which they're not going to be interested in, and when at the same time they're going to be under a legal responsibility to legal responsibility to pursue other issues which are going to require funding, and they're going to be looking at our assets. And by those, I mean the district council's assets and the parish and the town council's assets. The district council's assets, and thinking, actually, if we sold those, we could fill a budget hole. This motion, I think, gives us an opportunity to draw a line under our disagreements. This motion allows us to say, actually, we're arguing, this is small differences. Basically, we agree. Let's pass this motion, and then let's sit down, district council with town council with parish council, and agree sensibly about what should take place, what is in the best interest of the residents, what's in the best interest of the parish and the town councils, and what is in the best interest of the new unitary authority. And I think if we do that, the residents will say, well, thank God they're getting on and doing their job, rather than spatting in public about who he said or she said that. Let's sit down and get on with it, rather than continuing that, and pass this motion as a sign that we're going to do that seriously. Thank you.
I'm going to go to you, Councillor Lehman, for your final words before we take a vote on it.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to everybody who's contributed to the debate. When Councillor Grint wrapped up the meeting of the Finance Committee most recently, he said at the end, in a very confident voice, that he felt that there was widespread agreement within the council on the principles that we were operating under on community asset transfers. And I remember thinking at the time, he sounded like he thought he was correct. I hoped he was correct. And part of the point of putting down this motion was to see whether he was correct. He says, Councillor Grint said, that the reason we don't need to pass this motion is because the council already has all the powers it needs in order to carry out the transfers which he cited. And he cited in particular Hollybush Rec and the market in Sevenoaks. And those are precisely the two transfers which the Cabinet has declined on recommendations before it. So it's clearly not working as Councillor Grint thinks it should. Councillor Clack managed to find a point of disagreement. It was a pretty narrow one, I thought, to be honest, and I wasn't convinced that he really felt it. But but fair enough. Others have spoken. Councillor Clayton drew attention to other councils who, in the way they're conducting it, and the importance of keeping things local. Councillor Shea set out very compelling account of the legal position. Councillor Purvis spoke about Hollybush. I have to say, on Hollybush, the council has put out about, I think, 3 different policy positions in the last week on what it is doing about Hollybush, and it needs to sort out. And that suggests to me that residing with the town council, which has a very clear business plan, might be a better option. Councillor Stretfield spoke about the importance of political leadership. Councillor Thornton says we can't make policy on the fly. This is I have to say, this is the only opportunity we ever get to make some policy. And if we can't do it here, I mean, everybody's had this motion for about more than a week, I think, and every opportunity to consider it than their own positions. And I think, yes, Councillor Horwood and Councillor Thornton, I think the significance of passing this motion is it would be worth then reviewing previous decisions to see whether, for instance, it would be right to charge Swansea Town Council, Otford Parish Council for the assets that are being transferred. Finally, a couple of points that Councillor Maskell's made I wanted to comment on. He said quite rightly, transfers are not automatic. Of course they're not. They're done according to the judgment of this council. It's a decision for this council, a choice for this council in each case on its own merits. But that means that those taking decisions have to justify their decision not on the basis of technicalities, process. Oh, we think we might be told by the lawyers that something isn't possible. You have to justify it according to the policy of the council and the priorities of the council. And that I don't hear coming forward. You can't hide behind all these other things. Finally, thou shalt not fetter, they say. You are not allowed to fetter the discretion, the position, the finances of the future unitary authority. I'll just say this. This council, this cabinet is pushing to sign contracts for land east of the High Street, for a hotel in Swansea, for tens of millions of pounds. It is doing that because it says it wants to have contracts which cannot be unpicked by a future unitary authority. Tens of millions of pounds. And at the same time, it is saying that the transfer of hyperlocal, low-value assets is not possible because that would fetter the position of a future unitary authority. I just don't get it.
Thank you. Right, we now take a vote on the motion. So I don't think we require Councillor Lehman to read the whole motion out. We've got the words very clearly in front of us. So those in favour of the motion, please raise your hands. Those against? The motion is lost. We now go on to questions, but before we go on to questions, it's definitely looking like I'm going to have to extend, so bear with me. In compliance with Council Procedure Rule 21.1, brackets small m, I move from the Chair that we suspend Council Procedure Rule 16.1 and extend the closure time of the meeting beyond 10:30 p.m. All those in favour? It goes with the majority. I will try, and I would like you all to try and bear with me with the questions to try and move them as swiftly as we can. It may be that I will suggest that the answers are put in writing rather than verbally, because I can see a lot of glazed eyes looking at me, some of whom I know have left this morning their house at 8 o'clock and haven't been home since. So please bear with us, and we'll try and move it forward as best as we can. Right, we move now to what was item number 8, and that is questions. So we'll take them in the order that, sorry, I've lost my papers. There we go. We'll take them in the order that they were received, which is the order that are printed. Question 1, Councillor Manston, would you like to read your question?
Point of order, please. make a point of order?
You can try.
Yeah, okay. With vile anti-Semitism, you know what I mean, attacks in this country and with a small Jewish population in Sevenoaks district, is it in order to raise questions relating to what is going on in other countries rather than focusing on what could be the danger on our doorstep for our own residents?
The answer is the monitoring officer considers that those questions are proper at the moment. Thank you. Thank you for your point. Councillor Manston, would you like to read your question?
Thank you, Chair. So my question is about the way that residents in this district's money is spent. So in May 22, and I won't read all of this out, but in May 22, Sevenoaks Council invested 5 million into multi-asset income funds, Aegon Asset Management and Artemis. Sevenoaks Council also holds investments in a business account with Barclays Bank and investments in the BlackRock Liquidity Fund. I've raised concerns about these arrangements at FIAC Finance and council meetings over the past 3 years. I would now like to ask the question to the portfolio holder. Firstly, would you guarantee that when the Aegon Asset Management and Artemis investments end in May 27, if the funds continue to contribute to unethical practices such as the genocide in Palestine, sorry, I wrote Israel on this, so that's a correction there, then no more of Sevenoaks taxpayers' money will be invested in them? And secondly, will the portfolio holder, in an orderly and financially prudent manner, explore the options available to divest investments and accounts from Barclays and BlackRock to ethical suppliers and return a report and recommendation to FIAC? Thank you.
Councillor Maskell, would you like to reply?
Thank you, Chair. And I would like to echo Councillor Clack in being quite disturbed by the question. And I would like to reiterate that. I think it's very important to do so. And for the reason that he stated. The Treasury Management Strategy, which sets out where investments can and can't be made, is reported to FIAC and Cabinet each year and is approved by Council. The current strategy was approved in February this year. In 2024, following a request from members, 2 questions were put asking, do you invest in companies directly implicated in providing material support for the Israeli army, military? And do you invest in arms companies? The responses received were circulated to FIAC members. In 2027, it is unlikely that there will be access funds to invest. As a result, further investments in these funds are unlikely to be an option. In any event, investments will be made in line with the Council-approved Treasury Management Strategy at that time. In relation to Barclays, are the Council's main bankers. To change from Barclays would essentially require a project, as the bank is integral to all the Council's income and payments. It would impact council tax and business rates collection, housing benefit payments in addition to creditors and other processes. Again, this would be considered in line with the Council's approved Treasury Management Strategy. And with a new unitary council due to be formed in April 2028, a review of the banking provider will be required as part of the LGR process. I hope that helps.
Thank you. Is there a supplementary question? Thank you. Question number 2. And I've lost my paper there. Question 2 is Councillor Manning-Perry. Would you like to read your question?
Thank you, Chair. My question is about the provision of a transit site in Sevenoaks. Sevenoaks is seeing an increase in unauthorized travel sites, which lead to disruption in local communities and significant police, MP, and council resources. One of the causes for these unauthorized sites is that there are no transit sites in the Sevenoaks district. This means that the Gypsy, Roma, and travel community have nowhere to stay when visiting friends and family or attending weddings and funerals. They are forced to stay wherever they can just to keep in touch with loved ones. Would the portfolio holder be willing to investigate options for a transit site with running water, electrical points, and waste disposal facilities that would alleviate the ongoing problems and even generate a rental income for the council. Thank you.
Councillor Williams, would you like to respond?
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Manaperi, or Councillor Manaperi, apologies. And that is quite a topical conversation at the moment locally. The council recognises the pressures that unauthorised gypsy and traveller encampments can place on local communities. We are also mindful of the need to plan for fair and suitable accommodation options within the district. The recently completed Gypsy and Traveller Accommodation Assessment, that is GTAA, in 2025, does recommend that the council considers potential for bringing forward a transit site within the district. This reflects a role that well-managed transit sites can play in providing short-term accommodation for families travelling through the area. The council does not have a specific site identified or an agreed programme for delivering a transit site. No site was allocated through the Regulation 18 consultation on the Emerging Local Plan. That said, Emerging Policy GT2, Gypsy, Traveller and Travelling Showperson Accommodation, provides a criteria-based framework that allows any transit site proposal that come forward through the development management process to be properly assessed. Historically, transit provision has been explored as a Kent-wide initiative, recognising that travel patterns do not neatly align with district boundaries. Those discussions are currently on hold due to the uncertainty arising from the LGR. But these have been discussions, there have been discussions Kent-wide on this. Over the last 12 months, Sevenoaks District Council has not experienced any unauthorised encampments that have required formal legal action. For clarity, in this context, unauthorised encampments refers to encampments on land not owned by occupiers rather than sites within their own ownership. At present, the council is not actively identifying or progressing a council-managed transit site. Decisions around the ownership, funding and long-term management of any publicly operated site would more appropriately sit with the future unitary authority. In summary, while there is currently no approved plan for identified sites for transit sites in the Sevenoaks districts, the council recognises the issues raised and remains open to exploring this further option as part of a balanced, proportionate approach to meeting the need and supporting community cohesion. I hope that's okay with you.
Do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I have. Could you explain what alternative long-term solution you're proposing to reduce unauthorized encampments, please?
Sorry, say that again.
Could you please explain what alternative long-term solution you're proposing to reduce these unauthorized encampments, please?
Well, to reduce long-term unauthorised encampments,
Yes, please.
I'll give you a full written reply, but basically we have to supply enough pitches for these sort of people as they travel through. That will certainly stop any overflow. But I'll give you a detailed reply in writing if you don't mind.
Thank you.
Thank you. Question 3, Councillor Stretfield, would you like to read your question, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. In a health and wellbeing crisis, access to sporting facilities is crucial. Could the Cabinet member bring us up to date with plans for the AstroTurf pitches at Edenbridge Leisure Centre?
Councillor Horwood.
As I stated at the last Innovation and Improvement Advisory Committee, and I reported at the last scrutiny meeting, a report will be coming to the June IAC detailing the proposed improvements to Edenbridge Leisure Centre and the all-weather pitch facilities. We are currently finalising the proposals to bring before the committee and then from there, which altogether will represent a multi-million-pound investment in leisure and sporting facilities for Edenbridge and the wider community.
Is there a supplementary?
Yeah, I just wanted more of a clarification, because whilst I'm very grateful for the wider view on the investment in Edenbridge leisure facilities, my question was specifically on the AstroTurf pitches, And is there plans for investment in the AstroTurf pitches and does he agree with the Liberal Democrat position that we should make good those AstroTurf pitches as a matter of priority?
Sure, I'm happy to write to him with further details on that.
Thank you. Question 4, Councillor Lindop.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My one is pretty similar to Councillor Manston's, and in view of the telling off that we got, or sorry, she got, from Councillor Maskell, I don't want a verbal reply, just a written one. We fine, Councillor Maskell, thank you. But I will just quickly read it out all the same, just for good measure. It's, will the Leader of the Council write to the leaders of KCC and the Kent Pension Fund to ask them to divest pensions from industries or companies directly involved in or enabling serious human rights violations, environmental destruction, or breaches of international humanitarian law, provided that the fund can make a reasonable return without investing in these entities? And as I say, no reply needed, but thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Maskell will put that reply in writing. I am grateful for the fact that you are trying to move these questions forward, and I will take Councillor Gustar's question 5.
Please could you confirm what progress has been made on the infrastructure delivery plan since the close of the Reg 18 consultation in December 25, and whether Council is confident that a credible and costed infrastructure programme will be in place in time for the Regulation 19 publication this summer? Thank you.
Councillor Williams, is that something you can swiftly reply to, or is
I
it
can
going to
simply
take a longer
or-
reply?
It's quite a long one. Would you like a written one? I don't mind either way.
I'm happy to have a very brief response this evening, what the headline is.
I'll get it
Then
to you in
take a
writing. A well thought out question deserves a well thought out answer. I'll send you to you in writing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, in which case, can I add my supplementary?
Quickly.
That'll definitely come in writing as well. But yeah.
While you're writing to me, you may as what we'd be really interested in is if you could provide us with specific details of specific meetings you've had with infrastructure providers since December 25 and what concrete commitments have been secured from them.
Yep,
Thank you.
definitely. Okay.
I'm not sure Councillor Williams' memory will be able to give you that off the top of her head. So that can come with his written reply. Okay, Councillor Skinner, question number 6, please.
Hi, thank you. I stand up.
Happy to
This is to Councillor Roy, I believe. How many wheelie bins that are already owned by residents will become redundant as a result of the introduction of the new waste scheme? And what arrangements has the council made for their collection, recycling, reuse or disposal?
Councillor Roy.
Thank you, Chairman. I will answer the question as this is current. But I have to say, Councillor Skinner, I find the question most puzzling, as the council has never supplied wheelie bins for domestic waste, nor does the council have any legal basis to record, audit, track or collect data on privately owned household items. Although some residents, however, have purchased a variety of different sized wheeled bins to store sacks, it would be impossible for the council to know how many privately owned bins there are across the entire district, what type they are, or whether they are still in use or may not be needed under the new service. It is also important to note that the council has no responsibility for the disposal of personal household goods. A resident purchased wheelie bin is no different in legal terms from a resident purchased garden chair. The council is not obliged to collect it, replace it, recycle it, or account for it. Residents are, of course, welcome to keep using their own bins for storage if they wish. If they decide they no longer need them, the council will provide advice closer to the start of the new service on how to reuse, repurpose, or safely dispose of them in line with the council's minimisation objectives. However, any future proposals would need to consider cost, environmental impact and operational capacity, as well as provide a clear evidence-based rationale for why such an approach would be justified. The council's focus remains on delivering the new standardised service, ensuring that all eligible households receive the correct containers and providing clear guidance to residents on how to manage any items they no longer require. Given all the publicity around the council's extensive FAQs on the new waste collection services, which directly address this issue, I find it surprising any councillor feels the need to take up council time this evening with such a question. May I respectfully suggest taking a moment to review the FAQs so that you and your colleagues are fully up to date on the new services. This will help to ensure that any future communications from your political group to residents are accurate and prevent further circulation of misleading information on the council's frontline services, an issue that has come up several times this evening. Thank you.
Supplementary?
Yes, I have. Thank you very much, Councillor Roy, for your kind response. That's much appreciated. So I take it from this that when the many bins that are held privately are returned to the household waste collection centres, there will be ample capacity at the household waste collection centres for the connection of those bins, and so I'm pleased that you're confident about that. And I'd also like to point out that several other councils, including Leeds, South Gloucestershire, North Somerset, when they introduce new waste systems.
Councillor Skinner, do you have a question?
Yes, I do.
Could you
I'm
get
getting
to
there.
it?
If you let me get
Thank
it
you.
out, I'll be quick. I would to put the question at the beginning rather than the end to make you happier, Chair. Why is this council not following the lead of other councils, including Leeds, South Gloucestershire, North Somerset, who when they introduced new waste systems, ran dedicated collection rounds, temporary drop-off points, and contracted specialist recyclers to prevent their household waste recycling centres being overwhelmed?
Councillor Skinner, that was by no means a brief supplementary question. I'm glad you found you're pleased with my response. As I said in my response, the council will issue advice in due course, advice on if residents have wheelie bins, what their options are. I don't have that information at the moment. We will look into all options, including a return service, but I'm not making any promises at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 7, Councillor Algar. Would you like to read your question?
Thank you. Are you all still with me? Last but no means least, could the portfolio holder outline what specific and immediate measures the administration is taking to address the identified shortfall in authorised traveller pitches, given the absence of an adopted local plan for 7 years and the projected deficit of up to 52 pitches under the emerging local plan to 2042? Thank you.
That's coming your way, Councillor Williams.
Me again. You sure I can borrow this? Yeah. Right. Thank you very much.
As long as you're quick.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Algar. Very topical question once again. The most recent Gypsy and Traveller Accommodation Assessment, the GTAA 2025, identifies the need for 192 additional permanent pitches up to 2042, of which 115 pitches are required within the first 5 years. This represents a significant increase in identified need across the district when compared to previous assessments. Since the completion of the GTAA, the councils have granted permissions resulting in a net gain of 11 permanent pitches, reducing the identified need to 181 pitches. Notwithstanding this progress, we recognise that there remains a significant unmet need for Gypsy and Traveller pitches. The GTAA identifies a range of supply options, including site intensification and regularisation, which could provide between 140 and 151 pitches. There is therefore a residual unmet need for between 41 and 52 pitches. To address this shortfall, the council has taken the following specific and immediate measures. Ahead of Regulation 19, the council is undertaking a further review of potential site options through the site assessment process to address the remaining shortfall, ensuring that all reasonable opportunities are considered. Preparing a full and updated position on Gypsy and Traveller pitch provision, providing a long-term solution to the identified unmet need. which is to be published alongside the Regulation 19 publication of the new local plan, which is due to be presented development at the DIAC in June. Granting permissions for outside of the local plan where proposals are considered to be suitable and sustainable locations and are policy compliant, contributing to meeting need ahead of local plan adoption. It remains our intention to meet the full identified need for gypsy and traveller accommodation need through the local plan process, supported by an ongoing positive and proactive approach to gypsy and traveller provision at development management stage. I hope that's okay.
Supplementary?
Yep.
Thought so.
Always.
It is the council's responsibility to serve all residents. Planning inspectors are now making it clear that Greenbelt and national landscape protections do not outweigh this failure to provide. What is the portfolio holder doing to address this? Thank you.
I just told you. Thank you.
Is that your full answer?
It's the only answer. Thank you, Chair.
Is it brief?
Yeah, it's just in relation to Councillor Stretfield's earlier question. He did specifically reference the AstroTurf pitches at Edenbridge Leisure Centre, and in my response, I did give a response about the all-weather pitch facility. So unless I'm misunderstanding the question, I did answer his questions. I'm curious as to what else he was referring to.
Not going to ask him now. If he's got something further he would like to take up with you, can I ask that you email Councillor Horwood direct, please, now, because I know I've got a lot of very droopy heads looking at me. Right, I'm moving on to item 10. Thank you all very much for your questions. Thank you for your answers. Item 10 is a report from the leader of the council on the work of the cabinet since the last council meeting. Councillor Maskell.
I hope I can just take that as read, bearing the time. I did have quite a lot to say, but I don't think people will listen at this time.
That's nothing personal. Item number 11. Oh, sorry. Councillor Warnerton.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question about agenda item 10. I see from the leader's report, Councillor Maskell met with the Wasps Rugby Club on the 14th of April. Please, could he tell members what the purpose of the meeting was, where the meeting took place, and who was in attendance, please?
Thank you.
It was a presentation essentially on a proposal. There were cabinet members present, and that was that, really.
Go on.
I'll ask my supplementary question via email.
Yeah, that's fine, because there isn't technically a supplementary. So yeah, that's fine. If you want to ask a full and detailed response, yeah, I'd appreciate that then. Thank you. Councillor Robinson, did you have a question for Councillor Maskell?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Councillor Maskell, leader, I noticed that you've had in the 2 and a bit months there, you've had meetings with officers about community asset transfers. Can you tell us which of these meetings have been with other councils, parishes around the district, or other town councils concerning community asset transfers, engaging with those who are requesting these? Thank you.
I'm assuming you're asking that I have been talking with parish council.
Yes. I wondered whether within this list.
No, I've been discussing.
Only discussing with officers. None of the meetings have yet been with any of the applicants.
No.
And so my supplementary is: will you consider this?
No, there isn't a supplementary. Again, if you wish to email direct, then that's your.
Certainly, Chair. Thank you.
Right. No other questions. We move on to item number 11. A report from Special Urgency Decisions a report on special urgency decisions. We are asked to note the annual report on the special urgency decisions. So unless there are any objections, no, then that is noted. Item 12A is the annual report from the chairman of the Audit Committee, Councillor Malone.
Thank you, Chair. Given the late hour, I'll be brief. I trust everyone has read the report and everyone is familiar, or perhaps with the exception of our two new colleagues, everyone is familiar with the issues that the council has faced with respect to accounts preparation over the last couple of years, based on previous conversations we've had, not least at the last council meeting. I'd like to thank all the Audit Committee members for the diligent way they've engaged with Audit Committee's work throughout the last year, and I trust that that will continue in the year ahead. And finally, I'd like to thank Adrian, Jessica Booth and Jennifer Warrilow for all their support of the committee over the last year. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Malone. Are there any questions? Councillor Thornton.
I'm trying to spot the difference between the report that came out with our original papers and what came out in the supplementary agenda, second supplementary agenda. If you could just clarify that, please, Sean. Thank you.
Yes, one of, if not perhaps the most diligent member of the Audit Committee, noticed that there was an omission from paragraph 7. Is that right, Councillor Robinson? Yeah. So there is a slight change to reflect that the challenges that we've all, we're all familiar with in relation to the accounts preparation partly stem from the fact that we weren't audited for 2 to 3 years, but also some problems that Grant Thornton have had, with analysing some of our financial information. And again, I think everybody here is familiar with that, but it wasn't fully reflected in paragraph 7, but it now is.
Councillor Clayton.
Thank you, Chair. As a follow-up to that question, I noted that the auditor's report said that 10 lines of the accounts could not be reconciled in the statutory accounts on flows, assets and flows during the last financial year, which I find quite troubling. And I, as a member of FIAC, I'd just be interested to know whether any of those inabilities to reconcile affect any of the monitoring information we get at FIAC. I mean, I think that's quite an important point for those of us who are members of that committee.
I think we all find it quite troubling, as was reflected in the extensive discussion we had on this matter in the last council meeting, and it's certainly a concern that the Audit Committee take very seriously. As to the specific question as to whether those items impact financial information that's presented at FIAC, I'll have to discuss that with Adrian and come back to you.
Thank you. Thank you for raising that. Item 12B, annual report of the chairman of the Scrutiny Committee. Councillor Haslam, it's your moment. Your patience has paid off.
Thank you so much. So I'm lost for words now. Thank you, Chair. Although I've only chaired one meeting, the report is attached. Thank you for the Office of the Support and also the members of the committee. I take it as read and noted. Are there any questions, please?
You got off lightly.
Thank you.
Could I remind members that is a requirement of all members to complete the related party disclosure form as required by the Council's external auditors. Many of you have already completed these, however, there are still a number outstanding. A blank copy of the form has been put in your pigeonhole if appropriate. So there's your walk of shame to your pigeonhole to find the form if you haven't already completed it. I would be grateful. It would be gratefully appreciated if these could be completed and handed back, preferably this evening, but I'm not expecting anyone now to stay to complete it if you haven't already done so. Thank you very, very much for your time, for your staying power. And at 10:45, I declare this meeting closed. Thank you.